good.
Good to go, Pete.
Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you all. So first, roll call. Rob Mackey here. Richard Hasey
Here.
David Aiken
Here.
Peter Argentine here. Danya and Kelly are missing.
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Danya's held up in traffic, just so you know, so she may join us later. Okay, so we have a declaration of a quorum. So we're ready to roll and we can vote on things and also make decisions. So first off is citizens' comments. Sandy, do you have any comments? Hello, Sandy?
I'm good. I'm just listening. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thanks for listening in. Okay, so really our first citizen comment, so that he doesn't have to stay too long in terms of schoolwork and everything. We have Arul Santoshi, is that pronounced correct? Okay. Who's going to talk to us about his Eagle Scout project. He sent a short description to everybody. And so everybody can ask questions and give them some guidance and then talk about next steps. So Ro, if you'd like to talk. I don't know, Bill, where should he stand?
Wherever
You
you're.
can just take a
yeah.
seat if you'd like.
Yeah, grab a seat.
Grab a seat at the table.
So, hello everyone, and I preface this by thanking you all for letting me speak today. My name is Arul Santoshi. I am a Life Scout at Troop 22 here in Mount Lebanon. We're out of Southminster Church, and I'm hoping to complete my Eagle Scout project in Bird Park this upcoming April. My project will be aimed towards habitat creation for birds, and it should be staged in the riparian zone area in Bird Park, so that's in between the soccer field and Youngwood Drive. The project is aimed mostly towards the birds that are threatened in this area, so native birds that are threatened. And it should provide the School in the Park program that Mrs. Leventhal runs for depth and content for years to come. The habitats that I create should be part of the riparian zone, so to work cohesively with it. And I will be picking, so in order to facilitate this project, I will be doing bird boxes, which will be individually and specifically tailored for each of the birds that I pick out. They will be designed, well, actually, I have a, you guys would like to, anyone would like to see this? It's a sample design for, I believe it's for screech owl, eastern screech owl, which is declining in this region. The bird boxes will be placed in a minimally harmful fashion to the trees or mounts of choice, and they will be placed discreetly. They will be placed near the trails, but they won't be placed, right in front of your face. They'll be built for maintenance and durability, which can be carried out by my troop for years to come. In addition to the bird boxes, I'm aiming to do some trail renovations in the riparian zone area. So maybe remulching or weeding of some of the aging sections of trail. And once I identify some of the species that I'll be targeting, I'll plan to plant native vegetation. So, some bushes and such that should benefit the environment and help the birds to thrive and move into the new area, as well as benefiting the biodiversity and health of the bird park ecosystem. Thank you. Are there any questions?
How many boxes are you planning to do? Or-
So I'm planning to do maybe 5 or 6 boxes.
And I saw some names of species, but I didn't recall them all. Can you tell us what species you're
So
targeting?
I've thought of eastern screech owls, certain species of wrens that are declining. I think bluebirds were one of the ones, but they do require a more open environment, so we're reconsidering that.
The bluebirds are more meadow birds, but although you could do it closer to the soccer field. But I don't know
Yeah,
if that-
I'm not sure about the noise and all that.
Well, Richard has been doing tons of restoration work in Bird Park area. And you said that you've been in contact with the Nature Conservancy on their project that they got funded. So you would dovetail with their work,
Yes.
any work on the trails? And who would be your point of contact?
Well, my mother, who is on the Conservancy, and Mr. Block.
And one thing in terms of the bird species, I'd recommend getting in touch with Audubon Society of Western Pennsylvania, the local organization, but have, great resources. And also Museum of Natural History, Carnegie Museum has an ornithology department as well. So, and I have contacts at Cornell Ornithology if you want to go that far. But I think Western Audubon would be able to help you to pick appropriate species, and also even things like how high to locate the boxes.
Yeah.
So anyone have any concerns about like the trees that they're mounted on, or probably dead standing trees might be better for some?
Mostly gone at that point. They're pretty old to take it out.
Yeah, you mentioned maintenance. That's an interesting challenge, right? Because you have an idea of how high some of the boxes have to be for the different birds.
So I believe I think the highest box they have that I've considered so far is the Eastern Screech Owl that I just passed around, and the Glorious Interweb has recommended a height of about 10 to 30 feet. So I'm going to probably stick with the lower end of that just to make maintenance a lot easier for the people that are doing it, which would be my troop. Okay.
What's the maintenance involved?
So essentially some of the maintenance, it's optional in terms of, because sometimes birds will come back and they'll roost in the same nest year after year. But sometimes what happens is they'll leave like a nest leave a bird box with like a nest in it, or, like excrement and stuff like that. You'd have to open up the box and sweep it all out
Okay.
in order
Clean
to
it so
make it
it's
habitable
hygienic.
for the next birds.
Wonder if there are any designs that could allow for servicing from like a telescope and pole, something like that.
I could look into that. That's very interesting.
So would be any, we don't want to be climbing the trees probably.
It's probably a concern. Just what is the game plan? Taking a ladder out there, or
Ladders, yes.
from a safety standpoint? Will there be some supervision? Or?
Yes, 100%. The work will likely be done by adults.
In terms of mulching and the thing, you need any support from like Public Works?
Yes, likely.
Okay. So you should talk with Phil or Rudy as your plan develops. And Rudy's ultimately the person who approves the final proposal as you develop it further. And, any other questions? or concerns?
One more question. You mentioned plants that could produce food for the birds. So this goes in the area of protection, right? So we have deer. And we want the birds to be able to get to the plants without, keeping the birds and the bees away, without keeping the birds and bees away, but still keeping the deer away. So I'll be interested to see what you come up with in terms of protecting any low shrub type plants and how that can look, not too visually intrusive.
Mhm.
So something to keep an eye on.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, I mean, as with all creatures, birds need water, food, and shelter. So sometimes the shrubs create shelter, but we don't want to create shelter for the deer.
Yeah.
But native plants, obviously, if you're working with nature conservancy, that should be a priority as well, and making sure that there's no invasive choices and all that. But so I think, as you progress on your plans, just maybe when you get to the more developed step, come back to the board. Rudy, do you need anything else at this point?
Just keep us in the loop and maybe send us an email or something. Coordinate with you.
Yeah, a brief, like, key dates
Mhm.
sequence would probably be helpful, because you want to line that up with when you're going to be planting anything, if you are, when you're going to be working out there. So sort of a bullet point sequence of events and approximately when you would be doing this. So we can make sure it's all approved and also meets with like the seasonality of things.
Yeah, and just, I think, as much as possible, if you can formalize the maintenance plan with your troop. It's our concern as a parks board is projects are installed and then the maintenance isn't there 5 years from now when you're off in college. So if it somehow can be, you know, your scoutmaster might change. So somehow if it can be, you know, if that could be part of your plan is how to continue it for posterity. So,
For the next 6 years, my father should be the scoutmaster and my brother's in the troop still. So the maintenance for those years should be fairly
got a
stable.
good point of contact.
Yeah.
Long term,
Yeah.
6 years.
Yeah, well, he did it for basically half of the time I was in scouting and hopefully all the time that my brother is in scouting.
Oh, yeah, that is a long term as the scoutmaster.
Just one of those, if you have to do some ground-based boxes, just, you know, use wood poles versus
Yeah.
metal poles.
Yeah, of course.
We chatted about that. It's just visually better, like it's
Yeah.
maybe a little more expensive, but maybe some cedar or tree poles or something.
It might be, we don't want to like have too much going on in the park in terms of signage, but during the process, or perhaps, you know, the beginning, after the installation, have almost like a campaign sign type thing in explaining what's going on for the public. We're going to be doing that for the riparian project anyways, so, but it could be, actually can just be incorporated into that. So, and then is fundraising going to be needed at all?
So I will be able to handle fundraising as a requirement for my Eagle project.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Questions for us?
So I don't know if you guys have mentioned this earlier, but what will be like the next steps for me in terms of getting like approval or moving forward?
I think, I mean, some of that will be your Eagle Scout sponsor telling you what the requirements are, but I think on our end, it would be having more specifics about the exact number of boxes, where you hope to place them, what your more specific plans are for the trail and all that. When you get to that level of specificity, I think that would be the next time to present to us.
Sounds good.
So would the Parks Board then vote on it? Because I don't, it's not a commission or a municipality decision. It doesn't require funding and it's,
Yeah, I don't even think we need to vote other than consult. I think
okay.
for this.
I think if we look at like that bird blind, it's in, you know, Twin Hill, I think that we kick $500 toward, that's a little
That's a
different.
lot.
It's a structure and they're building and they're
Yeah.
putting in a park and Rudy's got to be okay with the structure. they're
Right,
building.
because it could be
Not a great
safety
structure.
issues.
I think the main thing Rudy's point is there anything going to be really high? You know, that where, you know, there's a safety issue around ladders
Right.
Yeah,
and.
That's
how
my
do you-
biggest
yeah,
concern.
how do
Yeah,
you-
I just don't want to see anybody get hurt or.
address that in your proposal.
Maybe to your point about the proximity to the trail, if one of these boxes were to fall, where's it
Yeah.
going to land?
Yeah, liability.
So maybe one person on Parks could be like a contact to kind of help get it approved. It doesn't even have to come back to the board.
Yeah.
It could serve as a work through it
If
and
it's-
then
if
we
it's-
have our blessing.
If it's regular bird boxes and a couple of years down the road, they're not functioning.
It falls down.
They're easy enough to remove. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not like a bird blind or a structure or a bridge where it's a big effort. If we want them later, you know, then they're not working out. The other space, there's a space right off of where Seneca intersects with Beedling, where we cleared that area out. That's actually about 200 feet by 100 feet open area that you could put a box or two in there. That's in like an open field for
Yeah.
birds. And there's a number of things growing here that birds eat. So that would be, if you don't have enough spaces by the
Mhm.
repairing project, you could put a box or two over there, or even up along the sidewalk there. Beedling where people could see it.
As a stretch goal, when you get a nesting pair of an endangered bird, can you put a
Nest
webcam?
camera.
Yeah.
On it. I'm not sure if my budget's that high.
Well, actually, Audubon Society can help you with that.
So when the bald
They do
eagles
that.
nest on the owl box,
That was
They're involved in that, and I mean, I have game kids. I think you should put that into your proposal, actually, as publicity and education of the public. I think, you know, get them out, Lebanon magazine article if you can, or put it on social media or something. So a big part of everything we do is education, so. Well, we got to move on, but thank you very much.
Thank you all
Consider
very
us
much.
as consultants as you did move forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Earl, for doing it and caring about our hearts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, approval of the September minutes. Does anybody have any issues or concerns with the minutes?
In the deer management section, bottom of the first paragraph, which is on the second page, Ian's estimate of the number of pounds of venison donated, I'm thinking it's 1,400, not 14,000. I mean, 14,000.
Oh,
So, 700
10,000
Actually, wait.
deer,
That's in the life of the program.
50, yeah, actually, I think it could be.
10,000 deer. Well.
No, that's not
yeah.
how many.
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
how many
Okay, right.
with the
Theoretically,
reproduction.
right.
And the deer we would-
It's like 700 deer taken out.
Let's say
That's what,
150 to 200 pounds. a piece.
100 pounds.
100. Well, I don't know, after you, it depends on how they're counting, like
Yeah.
hanging weight.
Anyway, maybe check it with scratches here.
Where is that one?
How much
Sorry.
did you say?
Second page,
700?
Yeah,
700 deer.
I think it was 700 deer. roughly.
So 3,500, yeah, that
Yeah,
seems
it's
high.
like a pretty high number, yeah.
Okay.
I think that he was,
Wait a minute.
he was projecting, right, like using his metrics, saying if they multiple, we had never done any calling and they kept multiplying.
No, but this is
No, I
donation.
think the venison,
Oh, the
the
food
venison
ones.
itself, yeah.
Oh.
A lot of his project referred to his involvement in it as well, like the years he's been involved.
Sorry, I take back, I just did the math. Forgive it.
Okay,
It is-
could be close.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, it's
That's
good
a,
enough.
Thanks.
that's a.
Any other concerns on the minutes?
Oh, 7 tons.
I was gonna
Motion
say,
to
he beat me
approve.
to it.
You said it was, you said it was a ton, it's 7 tons.
7 tons, yeah.
A second to approve the minutes? Okay, vote, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Next, commission update, Mindy.
All right,
Go on.
I got 5 minutes to be on the agenda. I'll tell you
Sorry,
really
well, you don't,
fast.
we can flex.
Okay, so lots of big stuff going on. We're interviewing our new police chief. We had an all-day assessment center right here in this room on Monday. It was a long day. The municipal staff, elected officials were involved in the interviews and the assessments, as well as the outside consultant firm and their experts that they rely on. That's GovHR that we hired to run it. So we brought 5 candidates in, and the GovHR is predominantly who got us down from the 26 applicants to these 5 people. And I feel like they are all stellar candidates. I had the opportunity to go through the full assessment center with them and meet them. So we have some good options, in my opinion. Now, where we get to go from here is we're going to take that 5 down to just a couple people, 2 or 3. We're still debating that right now. And bring those 2 or 3 candidates back on October 10th for a community forum that will be moderated with questions that have to be submitted ahead of time. And we're going to try to consolidate the questions for time purposes. But it'll be next Monday from 10 to noon, I believe is the time that we're floating around. And we need to start advertising this immediately. You guys haven't seen it yet. You should start to see it soon. Our PIO has already reached out to a lot of community organizations, activist type organizations, as well as to more structured organizations, faith organizations, outreach, the school district, and ask them to make sure that they submit questions. And we're going to do this facilitated discussion in the commission chambers. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get a school district space that was large enough to just sort of accommodate whoever wants to show up. So we're trying to kind of figure out, it might be invite only who's in the building, especially people that submitted questions. We want to get a broad representation from various community organizations, and then everybody else can zoom in and listen.
Has that public forum been a part of officer or chief hiring in the past?
This outside firm has done similar sort of things to this, but we're taking it a little bit to the next level on that.
For Mount Lebanon specifically? like-
I'm not aware that we've taken it to the community before, no. No.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever,
Yeah.
I've been there for several chiefs. So.
I think it's come from a place of the community is very involved, and this is a very important position, and they want to understand how we're making this decision.
I just see some similarities between this and like the master plan process and community input solicitation is you get input from, I don't know if it's a broad representation of the community in terms of the interest or the response to these types of things.
So is your point, maybe it's
I'm
not
not-
worth doing, or is
I'm
it
not-
just sort of
I'm just commenting
Yeah, yeah,
as
yeah.
a concern, like, just,
fair, yeah?
if this is a new thing, we should acknowledge it as a new thing.
Yeah, we'll get It's just like primary voting. You'll get the people who are most interested in vocal. And, but it's not really a survey. It's more to kind of see how the candidate addresses the issues that,
Yes.
that people are presenting.
We'll all get to watch, the public will get to watch how these 2 or 3 individuals answer questions.
Right,
And now, will all the public get a vote? No, but
right.
we can at least see how the sausage is being made a
Right.
little bit. And maybe why we ended up with who we're gonna end up with. What it is, but.
Yeah.
Any questions? Or I like the feedback. It's good.
That's a really good point.
Just, I mean, it's like, how many votes did we get from Aquatic Center? A lot.
A lot.
How did that happen? The selection bias, there were some good statistical questions in that.
Mhm.
You know, I see it, I see some similarities there and for
Well,
something.
they attributed that to, there was a code at the pool. So it was easy as you're walking by to click and scan. So, you know, it was an effort to try to get as many people as possible. But after the fact, the consultant said, oh, we didn't think about the fact that we posted the pool in the summertime. We're gonna get a lot of people who are focused on aquatic.
Yeah.
And so they had even said, you know, that be careful a bit with the aquatic
Yeah.
numbers just because of that. After the, but to your point, it depends on how you do it.
And so I'm fairly comfortable with the top 2, maybe 3 candidates. I'd like to see how they engage with the question. That's very valuable information. I think Keith wants to, our manager wants to see that as well.
Yeah, I think, I mean, your point, it's not a survey, but it is something, I guess, is that the
Mhm.
commissioners be aware of the kinds of people who will probably be, not the kinds of people, but the questions that are being asked don't necessarily represent the whole
Yeah.
community, but they do represent concerns. And again, it's a public forum. So
The
I think it's
questions
just
will be
bearing in
moderated.
mind that,
Yeah.
yeah,
You have to submit ahead of time.
Yeah.
So not everybody's questions will be asked. 20 questions, we can only ask, we think 8 questions. And then a couple other things. So we do have the commission open spot. That's Ward 3 applications we do today. We got 4 applications. So that's good news that we have 4 choices. The commission will be looking through the applications and then doing public interviews for the rest of the month. The appointment will be made by the 24th, maybe the 24th this month. So that's what we're working on, the next public discussion, and then we'll probably also have an additional special meeting for that as well. That needs to be decided on. We had to wait to see how many applicants we need to see how many additional meetings we needed. So that'll probably come out tomorrow. And then in the last couple of commission meetings, we did talk more extensively about the complete streets draft policy. I don't have to go into that too much detail, but that's moving forward. That's the idea that we're going to start to look at our streets as public rights of way for everyone, and how do we best use this with all modes of transportation, including pedestrians, cyclists, and as well as vehicles as well.
Great.
And that'll be, by adopting a policy, it means that now we can go after grant money and other funding for more in-depth work, more in-depth analysis over the next several years. Nothing's going to change overnight. And then same thing with our advisory boards. This is the one that we'll probably want to talk about a little bit more right now or later. So the commission has been talking about how do we structure our advisory boards. We have 19 or 17, depending on how you count them, advisory boards. We would like to reduce the number of advisory boards that are not required by the state. State is like a planning board, a traffic board, library is going to kind of stay its own thing because it's a separate entity, but reduce the amount of boards, advisory boards. We have the commission down to about 5. So that we can consolidate the boards with that effort to have them be more effectively aligned to what the vision and the strategy is coming out of the comp plan, especially moving forward, so we can support that. So nothing's going to be done overnight, but the initial talk was maybe there would be a mobility board that would include traffic and parking and all the other aspects of mobility, including pedestrian mobility. That would support, obviously, the kind of a complete streets area as well. Parks could become parks and recreation. That would encompass sports, but not necessarily give every sports organization a seat on that board. That could be a separate entity altogether that has maybe meetings a few times a year where those sports representatives are invited to send one liaison from the organization to a separate meeting. That could be
It's my understanding that that's what this board originally was.
exactly what
And
there
it's-
was.
there's been proliferations of boards. So if you go back to like
Yeah.
1990s, this was a Parks, Recs, and Sports
Sports board.
board, and it just kind of proliferated.
And for the turf, I think they spun off to create that project
Yeah.
when the turf.
But even before, if you look back at the old notes, 10, 15 years ago, there was much more focus on this board on recreation.
Recreation. So that's how every other municipality has it.
Yeah.
That's how we're.
And that's
so-
like, when we chatted about how the board, PAB members were, there was one recreation expert, one environmental engineering expert, and then one from each board for parks.
Yes.
That's why that structure was the way it was.
I just wonder how you, so I mean, like, our meetings are pushed to the limit to include everything.
Yeah.
And
They
I
have
just
to
want,
suddenly
if
be
you
some
have, if you're
subcommittees.
reduced to five, yeah, there'll have to be
Yeah.
work done outside of the committee.
I think that that's really the only way to do
Yeah.
it. But hopefully this will allow even maybe sometimes two commissioners and more staff to come to one meeting and we can make a lot of decisions instead of kind of everybody spread a little bit too thin.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
some other ideas for the boards are finance, and that would include what is now pension, and then the community relations board would probably largely stay the same. That was already expanded to include DEI work, so it's already large. And then I am the school board.
Or put me on
Oh,
finance board. That's
of
what I
course.
volunteered for, and I got put on this one.
Yes, economic, yeah, economic development.
I volunteered for the pension board, which nobody wants to be on. I manage pensions.
Yeah.
And
It's
I got put on this
fascinating.
board.
Oh, you did not.
I volunteered for the pension board, and I got then I got my.
The other one is economic development, historic preservation, and sustainability, environmental sustainability, to kind of have all those initiatives together. So I can talk more at length
Seems
about
like
that, send stuff
sustainability
out.
could go into Parks and Rec too.
Well, yeah,
But it's, yeah.
is it
there's
rec
overlap.
though? Is it, yeah,
Yeah.
and then that's kind of the question, yeah.
The point is, I think
Yeah.
that, like you said, there's so many boards, I can't imagine being in your shoes and trying, in everybody's
Right.
shoes, trying to,
Yeah,
and does it dilute it down versus having focal points for residents and things? And there'll always be complaints when you make changes, but it makes sense to kind of, I'd be curious to just pull out what were the advisory boards in 1995? And I would guess it's probably pretty close to what you guys are looking for.
we looked at in nearby municipalities. We didn't go back in time, but I can ask them to do that too.
Yeah, I'd be curious what was here in 1995 versus now.
Yeah, and then maybe we were talking about 9 people total, so a little bit of expansion because it is expanding the board, and then probably nothing would happen immediately. Maybe we'll look at it starting it in 2024, but as people start to roll off in 2023 or even now, we might not fill those positions. We haven't decided that yet, but that'd be my inclination is let's just kind of hold and see. As long as there's enough to get the work done, like this board could work with 6 people, but we got down to 5, I think.
Don't
Yeah.
worry about the quorum.
Exactly. So if you want to talk to me offline about that, I'm happy to, because we're still, this is the like, okay, introduce it to the boards, get feedback, tweak it a little bit, work on it for the next few months.
I just think, I mean, we've had meetings with the sustainability board and there have been areas
A lot
of
of overlap.
overlap. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can also see where they need to interface with other boards as well. So I
Yeah.
don't know what the solution is. but-
Yeah.
I'll throw one more logic. You've got a president and a commission, right, and 5 commissioners total. The president's busy. So if you have the president's doesn't have any advisory boards and each other one takes 2, you max advisory boards at 8. To me, it would be logical.
Yeah, right now I have 3 advisory boards, plus I'm on Connect, plus I'm on ShakeCog. These are 2 other
Right.
large cogs that are kind of greater Pittsburgh area things.
Right.
So I have, and then
A lot.
the mission is, every week too, but I can complain because you guys are here late night all the time. Working. Okay, that's my report. Questions about other
2
stuff?
questions.
Yeah.
Are there any candidates for Al's position?
No, we're not gonna fill it at this time. We're gonna wait till the end of the year
Okay.
and then.
And then the second question has to do with the comprehensive plan.
Mhm.
I don't know if the survey's still open. I was looking for it, couldn't find it.
Extendedlevo.com.
Yeah, but I didn't see the survey anymore.
Didn't think they closed it down.
Okay, well, I wanted to encourage everybody, if it is open, look at the interactive map. There's lots of comments, there's lots of park-related comments. But that leads to my question. In the comprehensive plan, especially since a lot of people are putting similar comments to what
It's
happened.
open.
Okay,
It's still open.
so the interactive thing is still there. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, I couldn't find it.
That's okay.
But I was looking quickly. So yeah, the interactive map is great, and you can like look at Bird Park, look at Rob Hollow, and see if anybody's put anything. People are putting down like dog parks everywhere. It could be a dog park, could be a dog park. So my question is like, we've just gone through this Parks Master Planning process. A lot of these things are park stuff that's coming up, at least on this. How is the Parks Master Plan going to change?
No,
How will this be dealt with, or will those kinds of things be just, I guess, looked at in terms of the existing Parks Master Plan?
I think it'll help prioritize the Parks Master Plan if we're seeing it all over in the same place. But comp plan is a lot about kind of land development, land use, zoning. That's the things that'll generally get changed when we change the comp plan.
Okay,
We're gonna look at our zoning after this is done.
I was just surprised to see so much, like I said, about
Yeah,
dog parks and other things related to
and
parks.
pedestrian safety, I keep saying, too,
Right. Okay,
take a look, yeah.
yeah, but please, everybody on the board, take a look at that interactive map. If you have trouble, I guess.
Ascendlevo.com, ASCEND Levo.com.
One little piece of feedback, if the sidewalks are gonna look like what they run Raleigh-ers, that looks fantastic.
But
Right.
it's both.
Yeah,
It's
it's nice.
three,
Those are
three
nice.
different patterns going on was
Yeah.
intentional, so
Yeah.
you
No,
saw,
it's the.
you like the
pattern.
three patterns.
Oh, yeah. I love the
Okay,
patterns.
that's what it looks like.
And this, the slope of the sidewalk, so they drain in the wintertime, it's just really nicely done. in my opinion. I just liked it.
Where is this?
But he just complimented the sidewalks.
So, I don't know what people were saying, I thought they were fantastic.
We hear other
On your
things.
street?
I heard that.
No, it's not
Too much
Raleigh-ers.
fish in a couple
Yeah,
of-
just walking, everyone's trying to
Yeah,
run
it's all by
around.
road.
Yeah, there's, that's.
Not all the cross slopes are equal or less than the previous sidewalks, the way they were laid out, so.
No, but you don't have the drain, you got,
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what other people are saying, I just thought, I thought they were fantastic.
Most people say it's too much going on, but I was like, once it's done, the planters need to be
Right.
in and the
Plants,
plantings and,
materials,
you
right,
know,
lighting, all
yeah.
that, LED lighting.
I'll be interested to see where the slope goes into the seating structure.
Mhm.
There are cuts to allow water to go through. I'll be interested to see if those freeze up and if you get any cooling.
How far behind are they on schedule? Or are they on schedule?
Yeah, they're
Way behind, right.
significantly behind. The new deadline is November. That's their new deadline.
November 30. Yeah.
That's something. that's good.
Well, either way,
Yeah,
That was
sorry,
okay.
We met
I
with
was
their
just
So-
gonna make a compliment.
We're in the heat.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. Thank you.
Okay, so
Rudy's got to do
next
it
time
all
I'll
the
give you-
time. Thank you, Rudy, for dealing with our contract that's behind schedule.
It's not just me,
Beating
it's
them
our
up.
engineer, it's our project managers, business district manager, everyone's involved.
Oh.
any final questions for Mindy? Or not final? but-
I just have a quick question about on the comprehensive plan, the interactive map. Is that new? I just pulled it up. This is really interesting. And there are comments posted on this map all over the township, but not many likes or dislikes. So I'm curious about this interactive feature and whether or not, I mean, when I took the survey, which was when it first came out, I didn't notice that, and maybe it was there and I didn't, I missed it, but that's really interesting, and we could potentially get a lot of feedback. I'm just curious I'm curious if you could give us a little bit more information about this interactive map and what the hope is behind it, and whether or not there's going to be any more information or emails going out to the community to gather feedback.
I just feedback that you're telling me, because it sounds like you took the survey once and you thought you were done. We added a
I
new
did too.
survey and we added, it's a different survey, and then we added the interactive map and we blasted everybody. But I'm hearing right now and learning that you heard it as the same survey.
And there's a-
Well, I saw the email come in. I get so many of these emails and requests to take the survey from being on, through the soccer association and the baseball association. So I just delete them when I see them because I assume it's the same that I've already
Ah.
taken. So yeah, that's an oversight, and I assume many others have probably done the same.
Like half the room has done that, it sounds like. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I would add, I sent an email, I think, to Ian, but McNeely isn't labeled as a park.
Oh, yeah, you
It's
did
just
send an
there.
email. I
Yeah,
saw
okay.
that one.
And then also the second half of your the undeveloped.
I haven't heard that one yet. Tell me more about that. I don't
Well,
understand.
Iroquois is there,
Uh-huh.
but there's that whole strip that previously was a path and a park, shows up in previous master plans. And in the current one, it just shows up as green.
Towards the Galleria or the other
Or
direction?
the other direction.
Towards Grand
Yeah,
Park.
right.
Below the circle.
Right, so that really should be.
Whereas the
demarcated.
homeowner's got
It's
a
like yard.
frontage in his
Yeah.
yard.
Yeah, part of it is encroachment.
So we need to extend the area that's Iroquois.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Got it then. And then I'll remind them that, Victory is still not on there. It's still not. I thought people, residents put it on there. I thought.
And this map is so cool. There's so much great feedback on here. And the fact that it's up for open discussion and for people to see, because oftentimes with surveys, residents don't see, or those who participate in the survey don't see what others have to say. I mean, this is such a great feature. And I'm curious also how the information is going to be gathered, collected. Will it be cleared? Will it, you know, kind of wiped free and then at certain periods of time, or is it just going to continue to grow and eventually be covered with bubbles?
I'm gonna ask this question. Will this information disappear? At what point? And what are we gonna do with that at the end?
Yeah,
But there is dialogue going on too. I mean,
yeah,
You know, Lane Famous Firm created this map for us.
awesome.
great.
That's great.
We're getting behind, we need to move on. Any new member business we have, Kelly, and we're behind, so if we can be brief, but Kelly's been working on the Arboretum event, which is October 16th.
Mhm.
Tell us a little more, Kelly.
Yeah, I'll just, I will show this. This is the flyer that you'll see around the town. So on the 16th, 1 to 4, it again is an event to allow us to keep our level 1 Arboretum status. And there are, I don't know if you all can read that. I should have been prepared to share my screen. I didn't think to do that. But there's just a bunch of events. We have 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock children's activities at Bird Park, information stations on trees, landscapings, and invasives, which is great. Maybe I'll ask the Mount Lebanon Nature Conservancy. I don't know if they have those flyers that, not flyers, but the pamphlets that the trifolds that we've seen around that are at the library. Maybe we could hand some of those out. Cider and donuts at the fire circle ongoing from 1 to 4. Tours of the park, leaving every 30 minutes. Family yoga at 1:30. And it just says at the bottom of the flyer, it's sponsored by the Mount Lebanon Nature Conservancy and the Parks Advisory Board. And I will plan to be there from 1 to 4. We'll have a table of sorts, and I'll be happy to be there and just talk with folks about what we do. So, Peter, I thought that maybe I could talk with you before the 16th just to get some talking points. And then I also wanted to ask whether or not we have any sort of tablecloth or signage or anything that I should put up and stand next to for any events that we've done as a board in the past, or should I just make a little something or a button or something that says who I am and why I'm there?
Yeah, I don't think we have anything. I have a tablecloth I could lend you from exhibits. Perhaps an iPad or a laptop just showing parts of, advisory board and.
That's a good idea.
Or as the Arboretum side of things, I would think Rob would be the person perhaps to talk to. No?
Okay.
Trees, okay. And Richard, certainly in terms of
I'm one of the guys.
restoration work. Oh, you're one of the guys. Okay. I plan to be down there, so if you need my help, but yeah, let's talk
Okay.
offline. Anything you need.
Okay.
Try to work.
Would this be an opportunity to bring up have the comprehensive plan on a computer and encourage folks to talk about it, or just show them the resource that's out there for them to?
Not easy for me to stream, but Ben, if you don't mind, you're already on, right? Or you mean right this second?
No. it takes
No, I
me-
thought so.
Oh.
Oh, no, right now, I'm sorry, at the event, And,
It's-
because it's not a parks specific plan, maybe it's not appropriate, but I'm wondering if there will be community members there, it might be something to make mention of.
Elaine Kramer's been involved in promoting that, so
Yes.
talk to her maybe. She
Okay.
Her and another
Right.
lady have been
But they
going around
don't
to
know the full
events.
state, So I'm gonna put that in my email.
Pushing the
That was one of
survey,
the
so
questions I'm
Talk to
asking.
her, have her.
Okay, I will.
I thought we did.
We'll have to see what we get for attendance, because it's during a Steelers game, so.
Yeah,
But
yeah, the timing.
even
not
I
great.
put up- It's too late to reschedule because it was in London magazine.
I'm not positive, but I think it may be, survey may be closing on the 16th, actually, somehow that date rings familiar to me.
Okay,
But Mindy's gonna check and let us know.
okay.
Okay, well, thank you so much for doing that, and coordinating that with the Nature Conservancy, Kelly.
Sure.
Doing the sign. That was your.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, happy to do that.
So Richard, you had some concerns on the recent tree work
Questions,
or?
just when, Bill, when, maybe it's from the business, but when the trees fall down in the parks, is there any chance to actually de-limb and section them? Because typically, like, there was one that just fell near the pavilion and then it knocked another one down. And the trail got cleared nicely, but then there's still pieces with the crown sitting there by the trail. I know, it may take some extra time, but just whenever a tree does come down, if you just delimb it, it'll rot so much faster and get the trunk on the ground. So, I don't know what the crews is gonna come and they make sure the trail's clear, but then they kind of leave, and just didn't know if there's a way to actually start having them delimb the trees when they fall.
Yeah, I mean, we'll look at it. Yeah, we just basically just try to get everything open or safe when the guys go in there.
Because if you look at the one that just fell, it's still up in the air. I mean, it's 7-8 feet, there's 2 trees in there, they're still up in the air. Maybe it's tricky to get it down, but that would be an example, just to pop by and look at the one at the pavilion. Is there any way to cut that up a bit better?
They may not even have touched that one yet, if it just fell.
Well, then
it's
they
still
cleared the
snag.
trunks out of it's a pretty good size tree. They cleared the trunks out of the trail,
Okay,
did a nice job there. But then to the right of the trail is still the 2 tree crowns are kind of
I'm
hung up
surprised that
together.
you were saying it's 7 or 8 feet in the air.
As it goes down
Like a
the slope,
snag?
so
Like
you've
a
got the
snag?
tree. Well, you got, I don't know, it's kind of weird how they intertwine together, but you've got like the slope here, and then they're sticking out over the slope.
Oh, okay, so it's not truly a snag, it's
Yeah,
just
it's just
kind
because
of,
you just,
okay.
could it be cut to drop it all to the ground level?
We'll
possibly?
talk to the guys about it, we'll look at it.
But there's been a couple of trees like that. where
Yeah,
it'd be
we'll
nice
mention
just
it
to
to
cut them, even 12, 15-foot lengths. it'd be
I mean,
great.
sometimes they're in a hurry,
Right.
it's something that they're just trying to make it safe and get and there's a lot of things going on, so, and a lot of those are a result of storm damage too, so we're dealing with other issues throughout the community. Sometimes you just don't circle back, you kind of, lose track of that stuff, but we'll talk.
I think just mentioning if there's time, because that was, I think, a big job that they did multiple trees.
Right, when they drop the dead ash trees up.
Right.
Yeah,
But the delimbing if possible, because that puts the limbs in contact with the
Understood.
ground and
Yeah.
it decomposes and
all right,
doesn't create a structure for vines. things like
yeah,
that.
understood.
Okay, let's move on. Anything else for your program? Yeah, okay. So member site visit reports, Rockwood and Iroquois. And again, remember, this is not discussion of Parks Master Plan points, but more just maintenance things that you may have noticed or positive things you may have noticed, or just anything during site visits. So let me start with you, Rob.
Went Iroquois.
Sure.
Went to Iroquois just before the meeting. It looks great. Play equipment, mulching, all looks like it's in great condition. The basketball court and new fence both look great. The stream from the circle back to the Galleria hillside looks great. It has a flat bottom and as gentle a slope as
That was
you can
redone,
get.
that
Yeah.
was just redone.
It
so,
looks great. I mean, great. Beyond the circle, we still have the encroachment issue, and the outfall from that storm tunnel is probably like 3 feet.
Yeah, we know that, we have work to do there, right?
So, but otherwise, the park looks really nice. I did notice there's a no hunting sign.
Yeah.
It's for next season, how do we get a label of no hunting here versus hunting here, but that's.
And on that outfall, didn't we talk about that like 4 years ago, something about the state controls that road and that's their.
There was an
outfall?
issue with one of their outfalls coming, their a discharge coming off one of their storm inlets up off of Gilchrist Road. So,
Yeah.
and they had some scouring going on coming down to the hill. We talked to them. They're not, they had their engineers come out and look at it. They're not super concerned with it right now. They kind of pushed it back. They've been made aware of it. So we'll see
Right,
what
so
that.
I think that's the one.
But the issue down below that Rob's
Okay.
talking about is our issue. That's an outfall of that culvert that's going underneath, and we're putting together stormwater management rehabilitation. That's actually, we're getting metal pipe through there too, and there's some corrosion and some deterioration of some of the joints through there. So we're working with Gateway to put together a plan, and we're looking at a couple different options, some newer methodology to rehab that, and that will be encompassed in part of that rehab for the culvert that runs under the cul-de-sac.
Great. If there, because of the accessibility of that stream bed and the low slope on the uphill side, that would be a good candidate for more riparian habitat recreation because it's so accessible from the park.
There was
If-
some plantings done along the basketball court area
Yeah.
there,
And
from that one outfall that comes from upstream and on Iroquois Drive. From that point down to the, I'll call it head wall, going into the culvert pipe, that was all rehab with, what was the name of the outfit, Bill, they came in, Murrayville, or Meadville, yeah, Meadville Land Services, yeah. They did an outstanding job,
yeah,
they
it
were
looks
out in a
good.
couple days, yeah.
I think, the higher and wider it goes, even
Right.
better if someone's
Right.
interested in a project.
Okay.
Bennett, did you have a chance to get over?
Yeah, but, said same thing about Iroquois, it's a great park, I was paying attention, special attention to this now for the project, but there's no sign at all identifying it as Iroquois Park. Again, I guess you're just saying maintenance issues gonna happen, it'd be nice if every park is capable of like hosting a kid's birthday party, I think, and there is no pavilion there or flat space, I know that isn't the park's plan to have some kind of flat space there. But otherwise, I agree with the current state of what is there. It's a very nice park in Iroquois. Rockwood, just a couple of things I noticed. If you put it into Google Maps, it takes you to the backside of the park, which can be confusing because it's not real as clear from top of the hill. And like we talked about before, the sign is.
That probably is because that used to be a parking
I
area.
remember that in the
Yeah.
last.
And we grassed it over.
Assessment 2
Yeah.
years, and people like that. I remember
Yeah.
2 years ago, I talked to some people at the park, and they liked it.
Yeah.
Parking lot was taken out and put in that flat space, so. It does take up top, which can be a little bit confusing. There is a sign there, but it's pushed back, it's in terrible condition, can't really read it. It was the way it is now. Also, in the parking area that does exist, is that part of the park?
Yes.
Is that true? Is that trailer that's part there belong to? Is that a resident or is that a parks or?
Not ours,
Not living? That's what I figured. It seemed like it was probably a,
like a landscape trailer or something.
yeah, it was a flat trailer. Yeah. just parked
Don't
there.
know.
Yeah, it's parked there.
Is that permit parking available or is it supposed to be for use of the
I
public?
think that's used to the park, yeah.
Yeah.
I think some of those residents have the ability to park overnight there too. There used to be permit parking up above the other parking area that was removed and grassed over. Excuse me, but not that area, I don't believe.
So that's something that should be
Yeah, we'll follow up on
brought
it.
up to with enforcement.
I did take a picture of it. It was just a small show, but there's just a flat
If it's, we'll take.
trailer that was just parked there. I noticed that there's work that's been done since the last assessment this we did there. Those pine trees that lined, I don't think those were on the park property or I think.
They were municipal trees. They were
they were visible,
one
yeah.
failed, yeah. They built that house there
Yeah.
next to the new house. And one failed, so we took them all down. They were all dead anyway.
Yeah, I
so,
can remember that the last time that it was, I couldn't remember which side it was, park or was
Yeah,
private and, we could see those out too. 'cause they
Yeah.
Didn't look good.
Cleaned it
last
up,
time
yeah.
through there. But, yeah, that's all.
Kelly, you have a chance to get that in?
you're muted, Kelly.
Let's see here we go. Thank you. Yeah, I feel, I don't have too many different comments. I feel very similarly about Iroquois, about signage, both from the street as well as also from the Galleria. But that brings up another point as to whether or not we want to make the park known at the Galleria entry point. You know, is that because it's the Galleria of Mount Lebanon? Is it within the Mount Lebanon border? I'm not sure, but I don't know, with that, I'm just wondering about the type of, how much traffic we might generate, and would it be, is it a positive thing to put a sign for a park in a mall parking lot? I'm not sure, but it's just, it just wanted to bring it up to mention that it might be something to consider when we do add signage, do the signage plan. We may want to add one to that side. I think it's actually one of our nicest parks. I think it feels as though it's very well maintained. Maybe that's also because there is kind of a lack of a pavilion there, which I feel as though sometimes pavilions tend to get heavily used by events and maybe aren't kept up with because there's streamers or staples everywhere and trash that maybe hasn't been cleaned up properly. So that might be one of the reasons why it feels like it's a nicer, neater park. But anyhow, yeah, no concerns over that park. The only comment that I have in having used that park previously is the overwhelming odor of sanitary, the discharge in the creek down there. Last year I was there for an event, and kids were playing on the stream. And again, it's great that they can access that stream, but it was so overwhelming, even 15, 20 feet into the mode park area, that it was just, it took away from the beauty of the park. So I don't know what exactly, what can be done with an area that large, because it's not just a manhole that's creating that smell. Rockwood, go ahead.
It's
Sorry.
sanitary. Was it distinguishable as like a man-made scent as opposed to?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it smells just like the smell that comes out of all of the manholes in Bird Park. And yeah, that was last summer. So I haven't spent considerable amount of time in that creek since then. So maybe things have changed and I can't remember the weather patterns at that time. Rockwood, yeah, I actually didn't have any major concerns over there. I am curious about planting, because the planting in that park feels to me as though it could be upgraded. That some of the shrubbery is old, so whether we just remove the shrubbery and grass it all over, or some of the older shrubs toward the top of the park, or we update it and make it feel a little bit more up to date. I feel as though that park is, especially in comparison to Iroquois, it feels like it's almost like a little forgotten park. So some attention to that park may be beneficial, and that was one of my parks for the spreadsheet that we'll go over in a little bit for the 1-year plan. But I was curious about the parking, because parking is in the master plan as one of the options for potential improvement in the future. And Rudy, you mentioned that the area above was paved over. So, and Bennett, you just or somebody had mentioned that the residents were happy to see that the old parking area was turned into more lawn area. So I'm curious about, I don't know what discussions have occurred around the parking and access, because I really am not familiar with that park at all. Really, I usually just drive by it.
I see it, it's not really a destination park, it's more of a neighborhood park. So I don't think the parking is really the issue there. I rarely, when I go down there or by there, see the parking lot full. I think that it's local residents or visitors from families down there. Most people walk to the park from Rockwood, Val Vista, Kiwanis, that whole just Hoodridge, that whole general neighborhood over there. So I don't think that it's really, we've never had calls or concerns that there's not enough parking. That's primarily why the upper parking lot was eliminated, because it really wasn't being used. It was really used by some of the homes up on Rockwood itself that they only have maybe one parking space off the street, and they were using it and they were issuing permits there. So that's what I see on that part.
There was a lot of people in the park when I went.
Were there?
And I was the only person parked.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. Yeah, it's,
Yeah, very active.
Yeah, there was probably 4 or 5 families there. while I was
Right.
there.
we see that with Iroquois too. I mean, it's similar, you know, it's most of the folks that live down in that area, that general area, that will use that park and bring the small children down there and play and so forth, or go down, take a walk with their dog and throw a frisbee or a tennis ball or something in the park. Not so much in Rockwood, but in Iroquois, yeah, we see it out there. So, yeah, that's my observation.
Not that we both touched it, I looked at it earlier.
I'd like to give Phil kudos on that too, because we had a lot of knotwood along the stream there. Phil wiped it out. It looks really good right now. Yeah. A lot of stuff, right? Snags and from the other side of the hill. Yeah, Phil deserves a lot of credit for polishing that park up.
I really wanted to get over there because I wanted to see the work
Yeah.
on the stream bank, and I apologize that it didn't, but it's been a busy month, but I do plan to get back there. The only thing I would add just from previous visits is it's kind of a recurring theme with a number of our parks, and it's in the Parks Master Plan and I don't know how it honestly would be done, but it may benefit in terms of the Galleria area and in terms of the encroachment area of, you know, one of the things called for was denoting where the parks begin and end, like in the main park and elsewhere. So seems like a lot of surveying work would be necessary, but we have talked about encroachment in past meetings. It's just kind of been out there in the air, and at some point we need to come back to that. Yeah, I think Iroquois is a great park. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. So Rockwood, I was at today, and the area surrounding the basketball courts is kind of not looking great. The tree of a lot of vine covered trees, and could if we could cut some of the vines, that would be helpful. The courts themselves seemed relatively okay to me. I think somebody on the comprehensive plan complained, but there is an end. The end of the far end of the court is leaning down from erosion, and then the court itself has cracks all through it. So it either needs to be sealed, probably eventually replaced, but maybe sealing would help in the short term. There's a Norway maple on the hillside that looks really sick unless it's dropped all its leaves, but I don't think it has. It just looks sick. The storm grate, it's a really small thing, but there's been some erosion in the one corner, so there's some sharp edges sticking out. Seems like a hazard if kids are playing around there. I mean, if you fell on it, it would do some damage. So they just need some backfilling of soil or something. Sharp edges. I just wondered if there might be a plan for the area of the 7 stumps, if there are some do some replanting there in the future. And then I think there's an overkill of trash barrels. I don't know about the park, but there's, I think, 3 trash barrels of the yellow ones. And I think, again, that they would look better if we had a logo on them. And then there's 2 green trash barrels with covered beside the bench. I think that's a really bad placement, because who wants to sit beside a trash can?
Those are recycling.
Oh, okay, but it doesn't say recycling anywhere on them.
If they have a green lid, they're put there with recycling stickers on them, so they're likely peeled off.
Somebody peeled them off, because I was looking and wondering, but,
The stickers that we use for
yeah.
community recycling, yeah, it should have those on.
What's our compliance rate on recycling? Public trash cans.
Not very high.
Yeah, so maybe just one,
Yeah.
I think we just need one there.
It's a
And maybe-
serious question.
maybe located.
Nobody's tracking it.
Why do we bother? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe even if we just had one, move it somewhere else, not right beside the bench. The shelter, there's a little shelter there. Kids have thrown rocks on the roof, potential hazard, but it could be a persistent problem. I don't know. In in the bottom area, there's a 3-foot diameter divot by the swing set, and then there's a 2-foot, just a narrower divot, possibly from equipment. And I would sprain my ankle on those things, so I think they could be backfilled. They also don't look good.
In the grass or
In the
mulch?
grass.
Okay.
Yeah, right by the larger playground equipment there. One looks like a stump might have been taken out a while ago. There is grass in there, and the other one is soil, and it just looks like it's like a 2-foot divot, yeah, like 6 to 8 inches wide. One split rail is decaying. Again, the signage, I didn't think there was signage, and so I was walking back to my car at the top where Google brought me, and it's like driftwood. So I would say it's a priority for signage, just naming the park. Probably down by the parking area would make more sense. That's it. So I know some of these things are like, obviously, not going to be able to be addressed, but part of what we do is just putting a close eye on it. So that's it. But again, kudos on Iroquois, and overall, I mean, I still think Rockwood looks nice as a nice little community park. I mean,
Don't forget, we're gonna plant the trees in there too. We're gonna.
right, I figured you would,
Right.
yeah, that's what I mentioned. And to Kelly's point, I mean, it might even, if the shrubs were replanted, it might cut down on maintenance. Because you get long row of hedges.
Yeah, you're talking about that row of views up there, right, Kelly? Yeah, up above, okay.
So, okay, so moving on. Capital improvement plan review. I really just wanted to tell the board, if you can, October 11th is the public.
For the CIP, I don't know, when it's on the agenda, off the top of the head, I think the agendas for.
So
The
what's the
next
11th?
meeting, the 12th, right, would be on next
12th.
Tuesday,
Next Tuesday.
next Tuesday meeting, the 11th.
Right, 11.
I don't know, because we have to fit in the interviews, but probably, I haven't seen it scheduled.
I think back in the main budget schedule, it said, and then we were talking, I thought that was the date.
Yeah, just because we have to also do commission interviews now, and
Okay.
there's a hard stop, and then we
Right.
have to do those in the point about it, for those that are
Right.
comfortable on it, so that has to trump things, so I'm not sure if it's gonna get shuffled or not,
Okay.
especially, yeah, but,
Could you let us?
but I'll ask,
know?
how about if I ask that and find out, now that we know the total number of applicants, we should be able to figure that
Okay.
out tomorrow.
I think the main thing is when can we have input or make comments on the capital improvement plan?
Yeah, you are welcome to come to give public comments. At any
any
time, at
commission
any meeting at 8 o'clock, you can do it virtually if you don't feel like
Okay.
coming over, but I encourage you to come over, it's just a little more interactive.
There'll be a sign up sheet in the back of the room at the
Okay.
commission chambers. You just sign your name on there and
Right.
register.
And,
for public comment.
In terms of cutoff, like where it doesn't really matter when we comment anymore.
Yeah,
Like you guys have to make decisions at a certain point.
the capital improvement plan, will we change anything on the capital improvement plan now based on feedback from the public? It's not super likely that we're gonna make a big change on it now, but it's because nothing's voted on, nothing's funded. But it will feed into what gets funded in November, for sure,
That's what I
if we
mean.
hear the public comment. So November 1st would be,
Yeah. And when you say what gets funded in November, that's just for next year.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
And that's more of like what's already in the budget. It's just
Okay.
the organization and the priorities and the rankings
Okay.
of funding. So, there's usually a line of 1 to 20, something like that, 18 of projects or things that get funded in the
Right.
capital budget.
And so something that's 3 years down the road, is that something in the 5-year plan? Is that something to be concerned about or to speak out about?
I don't think about it, it's not on my mind, but if you're welcome to do that.
I was just,
If you are,
I was just a little surprised to see the suggestion of turfing Bird Park in there.
Yeah,
When we have a lot of other priorities, and that's a huge, huge expense. And it's 3 or 4 years down the road, but I think, you need to catch it before it gets set in stone. Oh, it was in last year's.
do you want to talk about it at every Parks Board meeting? We could do that, we put it on the agenda, talk about it every Parks Board meeting.
Okay.
Or, I mean,
Well, I think, yeah, it needs more discussion, but I also think I would like to bring it, personally, I would like to bring it to the commissioners'
Sure.
attention that there's a lot of people that would be against it, myself included. For a variety of reasons, but I don't want to get into that now. There's sustainability issues as well. But in general, in terms of parks concerns, I'd recommend that everybody go at some point. We may want to be more organized about it, as Richard's talked about in the past, but there's very few people, it seems to me, that use the citizens' comments, other than a few regular.
So, I mean, every now and then we'll get a thing where like people are, have a lot of ideas they want to share, but in
Right.
general, it's really, it's a great opportunity to get in front of the commission. Really encourage people to come.
So if there's things that concern you as a Parks Board member or as a citizen, I really encourage you to take advantage of that 5-minute citizens comment. Because the commissioners are listening.
How does one do it without being just a cranky?
So they have cranks. Be positive. Be
Yeah.
positive. Yeah, make suggestions.
Suggestion, have an idea.
If we have
I
to-
was wondering, you said,
If you
they
told
don't
us-
say-
and then he told us about their schedule. These folks are working without pay. And it's
Yeah.
really incredible.
Like our public comments are nothing like the school board. I don't know if anybody goes tuned in one of those meetings, like, 1 or 2 people show up. You don't have to wait very long just to give your public comment, and then you don't even have to stick around for the rest of the meeting if you don't want to.
Right.
The same thing with
You
dialing
don't have
in.
to use the whole 5 minutes either.
Yeah.
It's a 5-minute
Yeah.
limit, but you can,
Right.
So you
Yeah.
can go on and on.
Yeah.
Here for
You
vacation.
know, my suggestion is we were just gonna hold the commission hostage. We were all gonna sign up for 5-minute slots every meeting.
Yeah.
And then do
And say the same
do a
thing
filibuster where we read
every
through the Bible.
meeting.
Well,
We once had a development or an group that was, had an opinion on a development that was taking that approach for a little while.
Yeah.
And it's like, you could do that, but
yeah, well, you have to think about what are you trying to accomplish.
yeah.
But I mean, the board, the one time when Richard and I were there, the board asked us questions. They seemed happy to hear our thoughts. I forget what we were even talking about, but anyhow.
It's a great
That
opportunity.
CIP, Peter, it has a narrative in there with your level, the board's level of
Right.
concern on each project. It'll say, this was Parks Board first priority, second, third, so
Right.
even
Right.
with no voice, your voice is still in the text.
Oh, yeah, no, I know, I'm talking about things that are in the plan that were not things that we recommended perhaps. And other things that aren't in there, again, for me personally, again, the fencing at the garden, which is also one of our, as a board, we put forward as a concern. So I think David Denellen is considering it a discretionary fund, but it's been in there for several years, so I'd like to see
It
it.
is a capital item. It may be an operating item, operating budget item, depending upon the level that it reaches. So the funding may come from the operating budget.
When we talked a while back, it was pretty significant. when we
Capital,
started adding it
okay.
up, Yeah, because of the cost of fencing and everything.
Right.
And it's got part of it's gotta be removable, and so you can get,
Right.
it just
The
gotta be
maintenance
gates.
equipment and so forth, right.
Because if you want to till it, then,
Right.
lots of
Gotta
people
get
see the
tractors.
chain link fence with a tiller.
They met with Grow Pittsburgh though, and actually putting forward that the more common fencing that's used in community gardens is not chain link. It's another fencing material that's used by Penn Fence that's standard deer protection material and sturdy. But yes, we would need gates. And I was actually waiting for the fall to get back to Dave and see if we can, as gardeners, give him some input into how it, how we think it might be benefited from where the entrances are and so forth. Okay, the invasive plant ordinance update, and RFP update. You and Kelly are working on that?
Well, I think the last piece of emails was that Rudy had followed up that we can reduce the scope, and that's allowed. So the
Right.
question was, instead of being system-wide, we tossed out a couple of, should the scope be a reduced set of parks? I know last meeting I suggested four parks, and it could be, and then go back to the consultants and say, if we just did this scope.
So
what
can I
would your bid?
give a bit of an update? No, I'm sorry to
That's
put
what
in,
I'm looking for,
but yeah, we had 2 proposals. One from Oikos Ecology, Dr. Tim Nuttall, and I actually spoke with him, Phil and I did, and BL Companies, B.L. Companies. Oikos Ecology's proposal, their estimate was $47,660. The proposal from BL Companies was costed out at $161,432. So I think right off the bat, we eliminate BL Companies just because of the cost and if we attempt at all to try to get it done. It was a great proposal, very well
They do
done.
like minor remediation.
Yeah, all kind of
Like
things.
that.
So reading through in our conversations, and I'd like to thank Kelly too for her input. I did talk to Tim Nuttall, and he did account for the hours that were not on that proposal. So he has it in another area that would be covered. Basically, the bottom line when I talked to him was, would you be willing to kind of modify this proposal to meet our budget? And he said yes. So we could look at priorities, whether we want to do individual parks and work, not to exceed, cost not to exceed $30,000 or slightly above that, or we could give him a limit and he can work up to that point and that cost. So I think he's pretty flexible on what he's willing to do. We could work with him and maybe have a either a Teams meeting or some sort of or a phone call, even a conference call, just to kind of set the parameters of what we're looking to do based on what his proposal. And I mean, he's done some really good work too. He and his firm and his folks, Carnegie Mellon, University of Pittsburgh, UPMC, a couple different things, and in this area, and very much projects like we're looking to do here too. So, and laying out plans. And he even said that. He said, I looked at the initial RFP, and I said, we could do this for a lot less money than what we were looking at originally. So I think it will work. So I don't know how we want to next steps, if we want to, take a vote on it, or maybe have a conversation first, and then maybe at the next meeting, because we will have to present this to the commission. They will have to approve the expenditure for this project, but we do have a $30,000 budget to work with. So, and what are our goals? What do we want to accomplish with this? Do we want to cover, the parks that we've been working on, or parks that we haven't worked on yet, or and what do we want to get from this study? I think.
On prioritization, whether you read Penn State, University of Wisconsin, any of those universities that do research, they always say start with your best areas first, because really bad areas chew up a lot of money. So that's kind of their recommendation.
And I get that, but I think that we've made a lot of progress in the last 5-10 years. I really do. I mean, I've been here long enough that I've seen the changes. A lot of that's attributable to Phil coming on board and having the time to spend, in the parks.
Well, one wouldn't jump to mind. What jumped to my mind first is the main park.
Right.
The natural areas of main park around the swimming pool, that's the reason I was making that point, is that's kind of our flagship park. So to me, that would be the first park you'd have him look at. And then the question is, what do you have to look after that?
Well,
That would be. one thought.
yeah, that's one thought. We've made a lot of progress in Bird Park and Twin Hills, though. Since this person and this firm has a lot of experience there, do we look to take it to the next level in these
you
areas
pick
as well?
4 parks, so it would be like Main Park, Twin Hills, Bird Park, and Williamsburg or something, because we're about to plant all those trees there or something like that. Again, I'm open-minded, which is really for the Parks Board. What do you think?
Well, I don't really want to make a decision, but I mean, in my eyes, we're looking to improve the natural areas, the wooded areas, and you've contributed a lot to that. Everyone has, the volunteers and so forth. But, I think the whole goal of this whole procedure or process is going to be to have something on paper that we can follow, a plan and request funding, and the commission will have an idea in advance what we're going to need for the next 3, 5, 10 years in order to get to the point where we are just maintaining. Phil's been working with Eichenlob here for the last 2-3 weeks, and they've done a lot of work over the last 3 to 5 years. We're getting to a point, we have a $5,000 not to exceed budget, but we're working up towards that. We might not even spend that amount this year, because they're not spending as much time, and it's just all touch-up work. So we're seeing a lot of progress in these areas.
Because sometimes when we would select different, if you have a big enterprise and you're looking to implement something new, you don't want to do the whole thing.
Right. do like
So-
pilot programs
You
in
select
small areas, right?
the small areas that represent the breadth of the conditions without too much replication. But it gives you the opportunity to study individual circumstances in this area here, in this area here.
And then apply it to the whole. the big-
Correct.
big
So,
picture, yeah.
so you mentioned the main park, that is a specific set of circumstances with lawn, big trees, play spaces, stuff like
There's
that.
a fair amount of uncut space in the two. There's-
Around the perimeters,
around the
yeah.
perimeter.
There are some areas like
I'm gonna-
that,
There's
for
some
sure.
natural areas.
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry, I need to cut off the discussion because we're really behind, and I'd like this to be at the November meeting. Our vote isn't binding, but I
Okay.
think a vote of support. would
We
be
have,
good.
we have a deadline on,
Yeah, that's what I want.
yeah, I think it was binding for 90 days, if I'm not mistaken. You remember, Phil?
90 sounds right.
Sorry.
Yeah, 90 days from the deadline, submitted a proposal August 24th. So August, September, October, November. So we can go into November to
Okay.
award this, this
Let's
proposal.
set up some time and then also, I guess if offline, I don't know if you want to be involved in this.
Yeah, I've been tracking, I haven't been commenting. but
Yeah.
I've been following.
Right, so if the three of you could work offline a little bit to help, what Rudy was asking for, which is how do we define what we want,
Right.
within the 30,000 and, justify it to the commissioners. I mean, we have the RFP,
Right.
we have the
Proposals,
money,
proposals, right.
but we still need them to approve it. We need to approve this contractor, so.
Could you maybe send a note out, just like, what are the vectors of scope change that we can make? We can reduce. some
Okay.
parts.
And maybe what we can do is have a
Or
conference
something
call
else,
with,
yeah.
with this Dr. Nuttall and the three of us or the four of
Sounds
us.
like a great idea.
Yeah, we can talk to him and talk it out and see what his, his thoughts are, because I don't want to speak for him because, he's the one that's going to be doing the work and he has the expertise in this area. So, I know that he's willing to work with us and I know he will modify his proposal to meet our needs the best he can, within the parameters of the funding that we have available. So maybe I'll send an email out to you guys and we'll do a quick conference call and we'll bring him in. I'll see what his availability is, try to do it in the next week or so.
That sounds
Then we
good.
Thank
Then we can summarize it in the next meeting and just show a vote of
And
support.
present it to the commission. Exactly.
Great. I'm gonna pass, if that's okay, till the next meeting, the invasive plant ordinance update, unless you have anything, any updates on that, maybe. I think it was gonna be going to the solicitor based on the research we had done earlier in the year about doing a municipal ordinance on invasive plants, basically to support the Pennsylvania agriculture.
Yeah, I don't remember. Is anything in my quote on that? I don't remember.
I just remember I looked up a bunch of different city regulations and things and forwarded them. I wasn't kind of the working, but I said, here's some examples and that seems like around June, July.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna go back to the solicitor because we had examples of communities that had it, but I don't know, what would you suggest as next steps?
And honestly, I remember the conversation, but I don't remember where it got
So
left.
this got
Place.
started with the bamboo concern, which is
Yes.
not on the list.
Yeah,
What are
But
we trying to accomplish with
we
this?
were trying to prevent neighbors from, basically by having the ordinance, keeping people from, if they're planning, again, bamboo's the wrong item, but there was a certain,
It was
if you
trying to
have
leverage
not-
where you have authority or there's the
Yeah.
mow of unmowed yard to.
Is there an established list of invasive plants that we're talking
Yeah.
about?
Department of Agriculture.
Pennsylvania Department of
Yeah,
Agriculture.
and they actually enforce.
So there was municipalities who had rules around invasives that were like tied to their mowing.
Okay, but
Same
correct me
municipal-
if I'm wrong, but isn't that a state regulation? And isn't it,
Right, we looked into this.
Okay.
And the idea was that it can't supersede the state regulation.
the
but it
local,
can-
the local?
The
can?
local
Okay,
can't, but it can support it and also can, so long as it's not superseding it in any way, can also go further in other areas.
so where's the enforcement come from? Who's the enforcement agency for
Well,
that, if it's the Department of Agriculture?
It is the Department of Agriculture. There's a form you can file a complaint on, but the idea of the local ordinances is they kind of keep neighbors happy. It should keep, I guess, the enforcement more local in terms of not getting to the point where somebody is suing their neighbor because the knotweed is encroaching in their yard, which I think was one specific case.
So I thought about this recently, again, the citizen crank idea. I mean, we have ordinances for mowing and keeping up one's property.
Right. That's more property maintenance issue though, not a selective plant or banning of a plant. And how do you,
How do you split?
and how do you control that too? If it is an invasive and it is naturally occurring and, you know, a bird, you know, poops in your yard and there's seeds with it and it comes in, how do you prevent that
Where
from
we
happening?
went, there's words around propagation. And so.
Well, that's a different, like if you're if you're propagating a plant,
Natural propagation is covered under the state law.
okay,
So if you're allowing an invasive plant to naturally propagate like knotweed, that is considered you are propagating. If you don't take action in your yard.
control.
To
Yeah.
control it. And so I think legally, that's where we kind of left it with the solicitors, that it sounded like, he said something about it has to be able to be visually seen from, you know, from like a sidewalk or something like that. If it's on the state list, if it can be visibly seen and it's being allowed to propagate, then it's no different than like a yard that's unmowed, the city has a right to come in and clear it. Well, you have the right to ask the person to clear it. If they don't, then the city has the right to come in and clear it. But it was something, I have to go back with my emails, where it has to be visual, has to be allowed to be propagated. Multiple years you see it's propagating. And so that's where we kind of left it, saying that we found cities.
yeah, because there's a lot of steps, even if you have high grass or weeds in your yard, there's certain levels that you have to reach and there has to be notices sent out.
Right.
Like certain time has to expire before you can go to the next level, before it reaches a
Yeah,
certain
exactly.
citation
It was
level.
that same concept. So
Okay.
again, if somebody has a patent, the point that came up is somebody has a really large patch of bamboo. It's been there for years. It's encroaching on neighbors, where it's really becoming a nuisance. Is there at least some sort of vehicle to address it? Wasn't trying to get every little piece of knotweed or anything like that, but where, or, I know a part you actually planted bamboo for privacy or knotweed for privacy.
Mhm.
And the neighbors are all flipping out because it's now spreading to the neighborhood yards because that is true propagation. They went and got knotweed and transplanted it into their yard to create a privacy edge. So
What
now,
town was
Yeah,
that
that
in?
only lasts
Here,
until
it's here.
frost.
and so
It's only
that's an
private till
example.
stronger.
So those neighbors don't have anything they can do to say, hey, that privacy hedge of knotweed needs to be. You can't propagate knotweed, it's a scheduled weed. That's all. That's where we left it.
All right.
So why don't you take it and like get it somewhere?
I
if
didn't
you want
want
to-
to take it.
Okay, well, nobody wants it, then it's dead in the water.
Yeah,
Citizen crank.
yeah.
With permission.
Yeah, so we'll just take it off. If the park
Okay.
board
Yeah, I
member
know,
wants to
but,
pick it up and write something up for us to talk about, we'll talk about it,
Okay.
but otherwise it's dead.
No, I just looked stuff up because my grandmother was involved in Wisconsin with running municipal. I remember as a little kid being involved in because for Wisconsin, she helped write the code for her town. Basically, it was every more or less. So I just looked up a bunch of Wisconsin rules, which are different than Pennsylvania was. Here's examples.
Yes,
I
the
can't
state
remember what it was.
legislature group found but anyways, let's move on. So, time to get into the parks master plan. Does everybody have the energy for that right now? So Mindy, again, this is needed by you folks before when?
We don't need it at all, but there's no
What are those things that we
emergency
wanted
dates.
funded for next
But
year?
we start to look at the budget November 1st. That's the first date that we'll start to look at the budget. And if there's anything that you want us to consider for 2023, it'd be nice to flag that before then.
Correct.
But if that's too much of an ask, seriously, just do it right, go through it, do the process, and then we can put it on a public discussion and talk about it with the full commission in
Okay.
Q1 of 2023.
Well, what we have so far is we have a number of parks where we filled in year one. Basically, we've got a lot there. And there's a lot of stuff that's like chicken and egg. Which comes first? The planning, is this even feasible before this stage happens, or should that stage happen before this? But we've gone through it and made a pass. And So we could try to narrow it down because there's quite a few, and it doesn't even include Bird Park, Twin Hills, Woodridge, Highland Terrace, Williamsburg Country Club. But these are ones that could potentially be considered as low hanging fruit and first year. Some are more complicated than others. Some are 1 year projects, some are 3 to 5 years, some are low expense, and some are high expense, but some like items 16, 17, and 18, which Danya was working on along with Al. Some of that is already in the capital plan, I think, for next year, to do some of that work. I'm not sure exactly how much.
Some of it's done.
Yeah, we did some of this
Some of
already.
this- Yeah, there's items in here I noticed that are either underway or like establish an invasive species management program. Well, that's what we just were talking about. So,
But on Bradford, we actually removed all the fencing over there with the exception of the fencing along the hillside. Yeah.
okay.
So there's the outfield fence, yeah, a couple weeks ago. Yeah, we took the backstop out, filled everything in, regraded it,
Okay.
seeded it.
It did take you 3 to 5 years.
The mound area still needs.
Not even 5 days, dude. A little more than 5 minutes, but
So something that's left, and is improving pedestrian connections. And I think, enhancing signage and wayfinding, which again, and Bennett's been kind of compiling info in that area. So I don't know, do we want to try to go through this really quickly? And part of it is trying to figure out what is going to be beneficial for you all as the commissioners. If we give you this list that has 40 items, is that too many?
Yeah.
Or is that,
that's
so how many would you like to
the
see?
3 to 5 things that we should really try to
3 to 5?
prioritize.
Whoa, okay.
In this budget right now for
Yeah.
2023.
In the range of what kind of, like some of these things are 0 to 10, some are 10 to 100.
It doesn't
Should we
matter.
just look at 0 to 10?
No, I would not. Look at, just what do you really think that we need to do this next year? If you were in charge, well, not just you, the whole Parks Board was in charge and you have,
Okay, so everybody, let's take
Some of
1 minute.
What we've done in the past, where we went
Right.
through and for example, we would pick,
Right.
4 to 5, 6 items for the budget.
what do you really want to call out?
I think the thing you pointed out last time, but we've never done is like a 5-year capital plan. You suggested that,
Great.
we have, what are our
Let's get
operating
that,
priorities? But then also, what's the vision, what's
Yeah.
a 5-year capital plan that the Parks Board would? So it's operating items versus capital.
Yeah,
don't forget, we had
honestly-
our list, I'm sorry to interrupt,
Sure.
but we had our list earlier in the year and we looked at it as we were preparing the operating budgets
Right.
and capital to present to the manager for internal review. We incorporated everything that we talked about previously in rank 1 through 5, 1 through 6, 1 through 7. So those things are already in the 2023 budget that we gave to the manager, which the
Yeah.
commission has not seen yet because the manager is still conducting his
Oh,
reviews.
okay.
So we're looking at this, probably projecting this, take your time, get everything together. You're gonna feed this to us, which we are going to incorporate into the next budget cycle.
Okay, so,
But there could potentially be items on here that are already in.
yeah, there are like
Yeah.
main park. goals
Exactly,
and things
exactly.
like that.
That we're.
But when you're saying that, the stuff that you've already done, is that capital improvement projects or?
A combination of both. Remember, we have the review and when do we do that? April, May, something like that? Yeah.
So, yeah, we took it.
Every year we do
Right.
the wish list of the commission or of the
Right.
Parks Advisory Board and try and incorporate that and rank it within our
Right.
operating budget.
We pretty much need to give you something in March.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah,
April's-
it's pretty early. Yeah, because
April's late.
we start putting the budget together
Yeah.
in June, late May, June,
Yeah.
mid to late June. So.
Okay.
That's
Like you were
thinking.
saying, some things would be helpful to have.
If there's anything you want to highlight
If
from
there's
the.
something
Parks
we want to
Master
get
Plan
accomplished next
specific,
year.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's a question I have.
I mean, it could just be one thing. Could just say, I really
Right.
hope you guys think about the golf course or whatever.
Right. So the question I have is, this Parks Master Plan has a lot of recommendations.
Yeah.
Ultimately, is our goal over 5 years to see all of those recommendations
No,
completed? Okay.
No.
So it's
not
prioritizing,
realistic.
cutting some off.
Yeah.
The last one took 15 years.
Yeah.
Right.
There's probably other things that are gonna come up between
last
now
one
and
was-
then, it may supersede what you already have in the parks
Right.
master plan.
So we still have our priorities, which are signage and communications, education. And that's one priority. I mean, there's some specific projects like Pine Cone and North Meadow Crop that were priorities for this year. What am I missing? For our other priority for this year? There's four, I think.
Pine Cone Park.
Pine Cone Park, North Meadow Crop, signage. So I think, we should, and I know, Mindy, you're really behind getting some signage in, it's low hanging fruit. And there's some places that really need it, so we could put some emphasis on that. The other thing when people were doing their first kind of pass on the 5-year, actually it wasn't as a 5-year, it was more looking at it as what needs planning, what's low hanging fruit, and what has a risk involved. So things that have risk, I guess, should probably be prioritized as well if they pose a risk to the community and to the municipality as well in terms of liability, but and public safety. So some of these things also overlap. They're like the invasive plan obviously is listed for each park, but it's obviously something that is not going to be approached in a piecemeal way in that manner. And there's other things that are pretty vague, like, I mean, establishing, deciding whether to have a master plan for the main park. And then there's other things that would flow from that that are listed as recommendations. So can those even be recommended prior to that master plan? Same thing with McNeely. There were lots of recommendations, but there's also, the plan and also funding issues, because the most significant thing is access, parking. And,
Well, we just may have to follow the same process we followed in the past, which kind of all grew out of the 2003 master plan. Is like we said, every year we would pick the 5 or 6 or 7 items. We might have 20, 30 to vote from. We'd select them and we'd try to get them to them for budgeting by March. I think the one thing we hadn't done in the past was we've never done any 5-year capital planning. We never gave a list of, we would have some capital projects.
There were some mixed in with that, yeah, Meadowcrop, what are some of the other ones? So there've been capital projects that have been.
Yeah,
mixed in.
versus
Yeah,
laying them out,
right,
saying
right,
year
right.
1, year 2, year 3, year 4,
Yeah.
year 5. We would tackle specific projects, but never lay out something in 5 years.
But they're part of the capital budget or the capital plan, 5-year capital plan, so.
So how do we achieve doing that? Do we do it during a meeting, or do we need to do that off?
Yeah, there was, well, like what we've done in the past, there was the 5-year plan, but for the other projects, we just had that scoring grid that we would put up,
Right.
and then people would score. The challenge is trying to score this many projects. If we
Right.
had more, we could. But the capital, that's.
Capital plan.
Yeah, there's a bigger, we'd have to just lay it out. You do the same thing, you would score the capital projects, you'd score the operating projects, and then the capital projects, we have to say, these are our priorities first to last, and then you say, okay, let's put this in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5.
Okay.
But it'd be pretty much the process we followed in the past, so maybe we just need to get the priorities all pulled together for this list. But then we need to whittle them down so we can vote on them in February and March. This month, we need to vote on them.
It could be a little bit later than that, usually April, something like that. Like I said, we start putting things together in June, really.
Okay. All righty, well,
But I do agree with your point on signage. I mean, we said there would be a standard. I went back to reading some of the 2003 materials and saying, wow, this sounds like we're repeating, we said we would have a signage standard and we would get signage put up, and then we never got the signage standard, we never put up. And so we're repeating the
same with
same thing.
2014.
So like signage, maybe we just need to make recommendations, just bite the bullet. Here's the high priority 25 signs we want, just put them, just get them.
Then it's going to talk about that
Yeah.
shortly, so. Okay, well, I guess I will get back to everybody about next steps. Richard, maybe you and I can talk
Yeah.
offline and,
I gotta get you my bird stuff.
yeah, and figuring out how best to whittle it down. Mainly the one I have the hardest time wrapping around is 5-year capital plan, but again, perhaps it's just looking at the bigger 3 to 5 year things that are recommended and Also just looking at all of the recommendations as a whole and figuring out again, which are the ones we want to prioritize. So, it's still a lot to go through. Okay, so I guess the final note on this is if there is something on it, again, that you think you'd like to see for next year, like bringing to the attention of the commission in November, I guess you could speak out now, but if you need more time, it would be to, can we
Just email me.
email you?
Yeah,
maybe?
just go ahead and email me what you think's important and maybe
Again,
half a sentence on
Yeah.
why or a sentence on why.
and it would be highest priority items.
And I'll collect that and maybe there'll be some overlap, that'd be great, and then I can share that with the rest of the commission at the right time.
Thank you.
I have all the notes. I always bring the parks master, the parks board's priorities, the sports board priorities, bring them up, highlight it during the budget process, and then I'll add that to it.
Thank you. Minnie.
Sure.
So I mean, we're trying to follow the mandate of the
Yeah, well, I
commission,
think
and trying to help.
Yeah, I think
but
it's probably
hard to wrap
subcommittee
around.
work. This
Yeah.
has been a lot, this is a huge ask, a lot of time, and it's
Right.
not the right place for a public meeting. really.
Okay, good.
Can I just ask a related question? So we have, I'm stating the obvious, but we have two very different types of parks in Mount Lebanon, one being the natural area and one being the more developed community type park. And I just want to put this out there for future discussion, something like the signage proposal and what we're trying to do there, try to implement across the parks will make a major impact at probably a somewhat lower cost level than replacing the entire play structure at the main park or something like that. And it will make an impact across the entire community. And we have so many references and so many, the conversation for the last 10 minutes, just, it shows how many different things we're trying to work between, and we're trying to come up with some sort of plan that actually makes sense. And I wonder if we could potentially think about what are some of those items like signage that we could do at every single community park. We're trying to tackle the natural areas, especially with the invasive management plan, which is fantastic, and that'll touch every area of the community. But thinking especially about the very developed community parks that nearly every person sees in this community, what are some of those things that we can really focus on? And maybe it means going out for additional help, like from a firm like Eichenlob or something like that, but related to mulching, even, clearing beds, cutting back old vegetation, installing signage, things that people can see that are really going to be high impact, low cost, but not here and there in this park and that park and this year and that year, but all parks in this year, and then another approach in all parks next year. Just looking at, I think that from an outsider's point of view, looking at, for instance, like Upper St. Clair, what has Upper St. Clair done, or other neighborhoods and townships around us? Their parks are recognizable because they all have similar features, and the mulch looks the same, or the trees, or the way that the parks are vegetated look the same. Tax dollars, I know, are different. Every process is different, but I would maybe encourage us to think about having, or maybe we can even put it on the agenda for next month, having a conversation around some of these things that we can streamline within the master plan, that could really just have that impact across the whole community. I know I'm throwing a wrench in there because we're trying to tackle all of these various approaches to coming up with solutions and making our parks better. And it's just, and I know I'm new on the board, so it's a lot. I feel like it's a lot to swallow, and it's a lot to understand. And I can imagine you all feel similarly. And I think that we're just treading a lot of water trying to get somewhere when meanwhile there may be some approaches that we could, there may be an approach that we could take that could help us in the short term, just really get some notoriety and make our parks look better. And then we can start to gain some traction that way, and the funding issue is a whole nother ball of wax. But that's just a thought that I've had, trying to really just make sense of this process. It's a lot, and I think that it's difficult. And I feel for you guys on the parks and the DPW. You guys have a lot of demands and requests coming from all different directions. So I'm hoping that maybe it was one way or another, we can make it easier on all of us and really improve the look of the parks and gain some traction in the community where people actually see some really major impacts.
So, one of the things that we've done, and Mindy has urged and that has helped, is picking what we want to focus on for the year. And we'll be starting that process in November, trying to have it done for the next year.
And just a couple things is what I was
And
thinking.
again, minimal,
like,
couple things.
Couple things, try to do them well. This agenda has got, 8, 10 items on it. And
Yeah.
I think really we can only accomplish 5 at a time at most.
Right.
In some of those have to just be like quick report outs of work that was done in subcommittee. So I feel you. I feel like we do so much every meeting and every month, but then we really can't make any progress, and we're having the same conversation month after month, year after year. And a lot of it is like, why are we doing this? And I was like, well, I thought you were supposed to do this. Like, what are we even doing?
Right.
I understand the history, which I may not. If you go
Yeah.
back to, 1990s, when the whole community, the kids were shrinking, and then all of a sudden Mount Lebanon turned over.
Yeah.
And then, the schools started reopening. My understanding, it was kind of a groundswell. Well, we got to go back. We've let the parks go. We had park space. Now we've got a bunch of kids again. We got to fix the parks up, which was the origins of the 2003 master plan. And then it was a mentality of just, we've let them run down. So let's grind it out. Let's get 4 or 5 items this year, and let's just keep fixing the parks and maintain them. I think the difference with like an Upper St. Clair is that our parks are older. They aren't consistent. They're at the same benches everywhere. But I think even when I started in 2016, it was still, we're grinding out the items from the 2003 plan. And about 2018, we ran out of items, more or less,
So
that we could work on. And that's when we started pushing, well, maybe we need to refresh the master plan and start the process all over again. But that all traces back to the 1990s, my understanding, wanting to get the parks back to being maintained because we had youth. There was a period there where the parks really weren't getting used because we were an older community. You think about what Mel?
Yeah. I'm just going to put this out there too, that I know that we got a lot of community feedback, and we used the surveys and we hired this team to put out this master plan, but we feel like the approach that the master plan was presented in was actually the right approach. I don't know. And I wasn't part of the process. So the way that it was presented park by park by park, I don't know what kind of discussions were and whether or not the township guided that presentation style, but I don't know. Richard, you even said like what you just said, a great point. Even just benches are similar, but if we were to replace benches or as I mentioned earlier with the signage, do something similar in every single park, and there's a consistent message in every single park, and even if it's small items, and the things that come to mind, signage, amenities like benches, cleaning up the pavilions, possibly replacing tables. These are a lot of tangible items that people use on a day-to-day basis that would have a significant impact on the look and the feel of the parks. So
Kelly, we have actually discussed this in past meetings. And I would also say, last year, beginning of this year, we recapped all of the things that we have achieved. I really like your idea of all parks. Like, let's do system-wide changes. The reason I want to cut short is because I want to allow Bennett some time to talk about signage, which is so important. and is one of those things we can address. But I do think looking at it system-wide is a great idea. We have talked about, even the trash cans, but also the benches and all that, getting a uniform look. Question is, again, priorities, and we also have these other pressing issues of invasives and so forth. Our agenda gets full because there's a lot of submissions to me coming in of things to be talked about. So I'm not sure, if we were to just keep it to our priorities, a lot of these things would drop out, but some of them are just very, very short items. I do agree. I think it would have helped if the master planner had actually done what we're trying to do right now and said, here's your 5-year plan, or here's your 15-year plan, and here's how these things could be rolled out, and here's how much it's going to cost overall. Honestly, I think part of that was shortchanged because of having to work on the recreation facility. I wish some of that money could have gone towards this, but I know it was separate. But I do think that would have been more helpful. Now we're trying to struggle with all these individual parts and try to put it into one kind of master plan. And as we said, a lot of these things do overlap, and a lot of them were recommendations. So I think we're going to have to take some time to wrap our heads around it. But again, I really like the idea of all parts and also having impact, so people can see. But at the same time, there's things that need immediate attention too, which is part of the issue. On that, so moving on, and I guess we'll follow up with some communications about this and trying to move forward efficiently on it for the next meeting. On Google Maps and delegation, Mindy had asked that we look into, one of her wish lists was getting all of our parks on maps. Google has a lot of them. Some are missing. Some aren't owned by Mount Lebanon, so they need to be captured. It's really not a tremendous amount of work, but it is some clerical work. So I wanted to see. I'm willing to do some of it, but I'd rather not do all of it. I wanted to see if there's a member who would be willing to assist me in updating all of these, showing where parking is, for example, and just.
I can do that. I can help you with that.
Great.
And I started it just as an example. Did I do it in the middle of the last Parks Board
You did,
meeting? Yeah, and so they accepted it, Google accepted it. So now if you go to Google Maps, you'll see Bird Park's field parking lot. So it's a very
Great.
easy process online. It's intuitive,
Right.
Kelly and Peter.
Great. I tend to get into I go down the rabbit hole with these things. So this would be a good task for me. I don't just get on the computer and start typing.
I was like, that's exactly what that seemed to be, right in the middle of the
Exactly.
parking lot,
Yeah, like even the golf course is way off about where it should be. Okay.
Find it.
Rob has a follow-up from his discussion with Ian. You should have all received it ahead of time. Unless there's any additional comments or concerns, we could simply put a vote on it and then forward to the commissioners saying this has our support as a board. So are there, Rob, I'll let you share this, but is there any discussion or questions?
Did everyone have a chance to read it?
Yes.
Peter, thanks for the typo. We'll correct that.
Okay.
It's a minor
The minor
typo.
I move we approve.
Okay.
a second. All in
All in
favor?
favor.
Aye. All opposed? Kelly, are you abstaining?
Sorry, in favor.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have unanimous support for your advisory statement. Minnie, what should he do to send that on?
Just email it to me. Thank you.
Okay, just a little cleanup.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for doing that, Rob.
Thank you.
It's very well stated. So, and I guess, maybe we can follow it up to see if, and that this was put on the meeting agenda again, because it's time sensitive. To hopefully maybe get some work done on it now.
Yeah, we'll see what they say.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you want to give a public comment or any Parks Board member wants to say
Come to our
this,
meeting.
then it immediately gets it in the public record. We'll
Okay.
also have us, say it and put it on the website or something like that, but that's a nice,
So should I plan to come to the next?
yeah,
meeting?
just block off 8 AM to 8:20, maybe
Okay.
8:25.
Okay.
on
The 11th?
Tuesday. Yeah, the 11th,
Yeah.
Tuesday. And you just go to that room right over
Yep.
there, put your name, send your name up and then.
Okay, Rob, can you give us a quick update on Pine Cove Park very quickly?
A pad was poured for the new donated bench. Thank you. Mount Lebanon Magazine photographer was there last Saturday before. So took some photos with some volunteers weeding in the background. Eli, the scout, received his Eagle Award last Sunday, I believe.
Awesome.
Nice ceremony. And my only question, fall trees, any more idea of timing of when that would be coming?
Around, of those three you gave me plus the two Virginias, right? One large, two,
One large,
Whatever you
three
say.
aspen.
we have, but I don't know when the tree or fall tree or.
I'm waiting on 2 additional.
No, physically.
Okay, you
I have what you.
Yeah,
need.
got it. Okay.
I get the
All
song.
right. Not yet. That's
I'm
fine.
waiting on quotes from suppliers. I got up Lake County, Mike Mooney and Schickles I already got. I gave him a deadline of this Friday at 4 o'clock, so.
Okay.
But I have to get multiple quotes in order to issue a purchase order.
Okay.
It's over our quote limit.
So we're out in probably November for the trees actually coming.
I'm shooting for probably late October, third, fourth week of October.
Okay. All right. I
That's what
just
I'm
need
shooting
to
for.
be available. All right, thank you. That's it.
So is there any celebration or commemoration taking place for the 100?
Or ask Laura last time, and we said there's nothing planned, so
Okay.
an event planned or anything, put it in, she's putting it in the magazine for November.
November, okay,
Yes,
great.
sorry, I forgot.
Thank you.
That's what the.
Sorry, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And thanks Rob for all your efforts on that. Okay, on the big story, communications and signage. I'm sorry for running late, Bennett.
That's all right. I don't think it's take too long. So a few things I did. I went around to some of the parks, looked at what signs do exist. Right, this is pretty typical. Kelly, can you see the screen? Yeah. What you'd see, this sign for Twin Hills Park is probably the most common looking sign that we have. Well, it's actually much more consistent to see the kind of warning signs. These, no dumping, dogs must be leashed, kids' lungs at play, right? Those are the ones that are everywhere. Some parks that I saw, and I didn't go to all the parks, don't have signs at all. Iroquois was an example of that. Let's see here. That's on the trail in Twin Hills.
That's not a municipal sign.
Yeah.
Someone else put that
I
in.
kind of got that impression. Of probably, someone put that there. If you went to Rockwood, this is the example. Like I couldn't even read this till I got pretty close.
How's that old West feel to it?
Yeah. So that's the state of the site. Either they either look like something like this. Generally, they don't exist, or Meadowcroft had these signs as well. No, that I could tell. This would be more about the hours than about the.
Right.
Yeah, we just added that to help with the hour
Right.
question.
And that's just, again, kind of a welcoming signs, right? At Bird, we talked about the parking, there's an exit only sign, right next to a no parking at all sign. And there's no entrance sign.
Isn't there? Are you sure?
It wasn't there today.
The same, that same type of sign. We tried to keep one-way traffic moving.
Yeah, I know. And maybe, I thought there was too, but when I went today, I
Okay.
did not see one.
Okay.
Was that, and then I also talked to Mindy today, and I talked to Tom from the sports board. Sports board, what they really want to do is get field signs. They want to not identifying the park, but identifying the fields within the park is their goal. And they actually can fund that through private money that they have lined up already. They just want to be consistent with us, complementary to what we're thinking. And get the approval from the commission to get the signs that they want to get. So the one, how does any other park besides Bird have this type of sign?
Sunset Hills Park.
Something those two.
Pinecone Park, yeah.
So his impression was, and Minnie can correct me if I'm wrong, that basically, this sign design could be without having to go through a whole design process or anything else.
Take this idea, take this thing, take it to Colano, a designer who did the historic preservation designs and the Welcome Mount Lebanon sign designs, and then ask them to give us a design back.
This was done, so this was done within my time here. So this was done to mimic the entrance signs that we have. throughout the
Exactly,
community.
that's the goal,
Yeah,
So,
entrance.
these are these are like a brass bronze, they're bronze actually.
This one's actually up on Washington Road, right? So I didn't even see it.
Yeah,
And I was talking to Tom,
right.
and he was like, there's a Spiceburg Park sign. I was like, where? I didn't see it. He said, it's up on Washington Road.
Yeah, There's only two of them.
so,
So more like this, yeah.
so, well, I'd like to interject that, back to Kelly's point about all parks. I think it needs to be more than just say, go back to Colano and do something like this. I think we really need a guidebook or standards that are in paper that also the sports board can look at, or here's what a sports sign should look like. So that when they're going to do another sports field, it doesn't just, it's, I mean, it's not random like we just saw in Bennett's photos. We, parks and organizations and state parks have.
So that's what my question-
I'm sorry. go ahead.
Yeah, so Pittsburgh Parks has this style guide. I found in our, in Mellon regulations, there's things about the signs, but size of signs, but nothing about, not a style guide, nothing like this. Does that exist?
No, not that I'm aware of, we need one.
That's what we need.
We need
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
So how
also
do-
for
so
ways
can-
of
I'm gonna be-
finding,
Yeah.
those are different things.
So we've been saying that for nearly 20 years now. So how do we actually get one done as a
We
government?
need a resolution.
That's what I wanted to, curious about that too. How do we make it actually happen?
So,
Cost,
Yeah,
Right.
can someone on Parks create a draft version?
I could spin it out.
Or do I
work
need
with
to
you
pay
on it.
somebody to do it?
well, I think we would be the designer, right, to be part of that.
I think that's what's in the science. Look for what people, I was like surprised back in 2003, that's why it's the same issue. We had to do a sign standard first.
Yeah.
And we can do signs. So the sign has been sitting there for 20 years.
Yeah.
So if you go through this, right, there's a lot in there, right? We could try to recreate something like this, but then we'd probably be getting really deep and
Yeah,
taking forever, right? So
Right.
the other, we could do the progressive approach where we get focused first on just getting a design standard for the parks and the fields, right? And then we can just keep building off of that. And we don't have to knock out something that looks just like this round one, but to,
If I
Maybe like a
might-
light, okay.
Yeah, if I might suggest, why don't you guys give me the opportunity to talk to Laura Lilly in our PIO? She has art people on her staff, and maybe we can come up with a couple different, the versions of things that we could do and present them to the board maybe at the next meeting if we can.
Yeah.
And then we can make a decision, because, that's our challenge. What we can put signs in, but what are we gonna put in and where are we gonna put it? And, what are they gonna look like, right? What color are they gonna be? I mean, national parks and so forth, they have just brown and white, typical normal signs.
Yeah,
Is that what we want to look at? I mean, or we want to look at something a little,
no, I mean, I think that's great what we have.
I think like
for
Kelly's
parks.
saying, yeah, we want something that's going to identify with Mount Lebanon too. So
Yeah.
whether that's the Mount Lebanon logo on everyone, or if it's
But
a certain
even-
shape, like Bird Park, you get the
Exactly.
Bird Park sign there. Is
It has to
that what
say
we're
like,
after?
I mean, if we want standardization, it should even say at what level they should be on. Take into account accessibility, perhaps.
Lockdown now.
Yeah. But I think Bennett.
Well, not only that, we can get away, I mean, that's probably an $800 to $1,000 sign right there. So we can probably go with just a regular metal blank, like we have stop signs and speed limit signs and so forth, aluminum blanks, and come up with a design that we can have made, and that could be our standard too, and it would be a lot cheaper. We could do those for 30, 40 bucks a
Right.
pop, probably, depending on the
I think
size.
it'd be nice if you don't have to keep going back to the designer.
Right,
Once we have a standard,
right.
you guys can, the communication department can churn them out. Because it's really not, once you have the pattern, it's just working.
I would just imagine though that it's more complicated than that, in that you had a sign there that identifies the existence of a park. But what if that park has a field? Is that gonna be on the sign too? And what's the dimension? Is it like a layered thing? Because it has to be expandable, collapsible to address all the different.
I don't know. I mean, I think, again, this is getting perhaps into the weeds and for further discussion, but I think if you forwarded the Parks Conservancy to Rudy saying, you know, we don't need that level of depth, but
A park's a
Just-
park, we just need to identify. it
Yeah,
and
I
say
think,
that it's
Rob,
here.
It's like the
And
county
my
parks.
response would be that you have the bird park, which is just like you would have Main Park. And then you have wayfinding that says tennis courts and they might even have their own. And that's a different standard. And it's a smaller standard. And, you know, but it's still clear and it's graphic and it all fits a design style. Just as an analogy, every museum exhibit has a design guide that specifies the colors, the fonts and everything else. So it all feels like it's all work. And so, in terms of bird park, I mean, at the soccer field, that's where you would have a sign saying either bird park, soccer field, or just soccer, or, actually, John Doctor soccer field, and parking and so forth. And then even a sign pointing down to the field if necessary. So, I think these elements are part of what a design guide specifies.
Challenges we gotta figure out how to keep it simple.
Yeah, so let me take a swing at this then. So we know we have all of our parks mapped on our GIS.
Right.
So do we just identify all the parks? We get the same sign for every park and we identify the entrances and we start there and then we move on from there.
Yeah,
That was-
That's, yeah,
here, look at
Great
things to the
example.
next level.
And we move, and maybe fields too, because I mean, you're talking about fields too. I think
Yeah.
maybe that should be
The
incorporated.
sports teams.
And one of my points, I think Main Park was, the people not from the community, like coming for games and stuff, there needed to be a clear visible sign on each edge of Cedar, so when someone was hitting the edge of the park, they could see where, you know, Mount Lebanon Main Park, so they could know to slow down and look for their turn. And you've heard this thing about birds, you can come up from Cedar and then up Beekman, you never know you're driving past the Bird Park soccer field. So to your point, one of the, I think, main things I've heard over and over the years was the lack of park designation signage on the corners, so as someone's hitting it, you know, they're.
Yeah, you're approaching, yeah.
I'm not an expert on signage, but it seems like you need to do something.
I'm not either, but yeah, it's,
Well, and I think the sports fields are especially important too, because you have people coming from other communities. And I know even the first time I went to Bradford and I was like, is this where it is? You know, because it's totally in. And that was many years ago.
and that would
but-
probably, I mean, posting of the fields would probably primarily be at the parking areas,
Yeah.
right? Because that's where you're gonna go to get the
Right.
kids out and get to the field or whatever, so. Okay, I think maybe we can make some progress on it in the next 20 years.
do we,
That there should be, it says overflow parking at Bird, and you can park and mark in school on weekends.
Well, again, you know, I think we gotta start somewhere, so we just,
Yeah.
yeah, let's start with the basics and then move on from, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think we're gonna overwhelm ourselves again and get, yeah,
If we focus on entrance signs, field signs, parking signs.
Yeah,
that'd be
exactly.
very-
That's-
and the wayfinding is important too, wayfinding. Do we have a contract with Polano, or do we
No.
have any sort of? We do not.
Yeah, we
sorry.
worked Just recently though, with the Historic Preservation Board, they did sign toppers and they also did some of our Welcome Mount Lebanon signs. And so we don't have any more money left in that budget, but because they just did work with us, we could go back to them and under a change order and say, can you give us some additional designs following the same design that we already approved? Otherwise, otherwise we would need to put it out to bid, but because we.
So they made this Pittsburgh,
okay.
Parks style guide.
No way?
So it could just be.
Solano did that too?
Yeah,
Okay,
just copy it.
yeah, so we can.
Well, it could be, you know, compressed. Kind of like the Park Service, they have way too much information.
Yeah.
Where it's really just a simple thing, like it's the arrowhead. you know, so-
Mhm.
Okay.
So
let's-
Al was on that committee, right? Al was helping you, Bennett, is that right? The two of you were?
We were assigned to it, either. of
So
us.
Ben might need a helper, Kelly.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I mean, this is, you know, this is part of what I do for work too. So this is, I'm very comfortable in this arena, so I'm happy to help you, Bennett.
Okay.
Great, Kelly, thank you.
And the next step was that me, Tom, Mindy, Kelly, we're gonna do a follow-up call about because they want to get moving, they have the funding, they want to get
Yeah,
field signs, but they want to make sure that they,
Tom really wanted to get it done by the end of this year,
Right.
honestly. And we were hoping to get some of the critical parts done as well, but
Mhm.
David Donnellan in on that conversation too, with the fields. David Donnellan, the
Well,
recreation director.
Yeah, I don't, Keith McGill said that, I don't think Volun told you guys that you'd be point to
He
start.
volunteered us, yes.
Exactly, he volunteered, he
Yes,
told
he
you.
did.
So then he said you guys should pull in Laura and David when you think it's appropriate,
Okay.
but you be
Yeah, Laura
point.
should be part of it.
So I didn't want to ask David unless you think we should ask David.
Well, with the fields, I mean, I think
Okay.
he's, you know,
So
they
it's okay to
program
invite him.
those and everything, yeah. So he has a different perspective than we probably do,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, we're past 8:30,
Overtime.
overtime, yes, sorry. I'll just quickly, we need nominations to be chair for next year. I will be available if you'd like to assist as, you know, vice chair or whatever, if you need it. And, but somebody else should be chair for the year. So, next meeting, if you want to nominate yourselves or nominate somebody else, that would be great, and we'll vote for January.
So you can, just to be clear, you can nominate yourself?
Yeah,
Awesome. Is that all right?
I think that's okay. I mean,
Love it.
basically, I'm the chair because everybody took 2 steps back. Let's see if
You're slow now.
Yeah, I'm too slow. I was the new guy. No, but I've enjoyed it, but it is a lot of work. Just coordinating everything. Okay, Bill, maintenance updates.
Just real quick, with one remaining sports field as far as our cultural practices go down at Bird Park to complete. We got Dixon done, all the big heavy traffic lawn areas throughout Main Park, Rockwood, here, anywhere where we could safely drive, aerate, seed, fertilize, we did so over this past month. Down at Rob Hollow, we finished up installing about 30 tree guards on the new plantings down there. So total landscaping will be back probably later in November to replace about 6 to 8 trees. 2 more look a little questionable. I don't know if you've been through there recently, but so they're on their dock to replace, but we just beat the buck rub as one was looking up at us like, why'd you put that on there? Like, he was concerned, but we moved on. So the Rockwood sign, we got a new carpenter, promotion from within. That Rockwood sign is about halfway new routed. Cost wise, it's a piece of scrap lumber that's sitting in the yard, so it's not a big deal. That's already on the way to being replaced. And the mounting location is going to be closer towards the parking lot. So that's just like something real quick for not a whole lot of effort that would be well received, I'm sure.
We'll take the old one.
Yeah, the old one's going to the old carpenter's house too. They're all gone. Invasive work with Eichenlob, we touched areas in Bird Park, Iroquois, Main Park, Hillside, Main Park, pool fencing perimeter, public works yard from Lindendale all the way down the stream outfall, all the way past by Crust Pizza or whatever that one is down there. That's how far we got down there. Twin Hills, they retreated 8 acres of honeysuckle. That would be the 3rd year of retreats back through there. And you can see we've added 4 areas on we didn't do last year because what he's doing is working. Knotweed, new areas that we went into this year were Williamsburg, along the fence line of the courts. Got a little bit in there that was, I think it was dumping, but hard to say. It doesn't matter. It's going to be dead within a couple hours. And up towards Earlswood a little bit and on there, but there's a big problem up there. But we've done a nice little chip away approach where he knocks some stuff out. I come back, seed behind him, and then we can treat with a 3-way herbicide that keeps the desirables, chokes the knotweed out. There was a full stand, if you remember, down at Iroquois that pushed probably 25 foot back on the stream bank. That's just 3 years of constantly retreating and overseeding with fescues and mixes like that. So it can be done, and we're definitely doing it. Some of the in-house stuff, myself, been treating as many tree of heaven as I can find time to go do. Down in the lower part of Rob Hollow, where there's some lesser celandine. There used to be a house on the corner down there. That whole grove down there, I did last year. This year, had a little bit of regrowth on some. I think we totally smoked them this year, so that whole lower area, I think, is going to be in good shape. Other areas included the other end of the culvert. Talking with Eichenlob about this, anytime you would, hit the machete into the tree, 4 or 5 lanternfly would fall on your face,
Oh, geez.
fly around. I mean, they're here and it is what it is. So, but they're like grouse. They're scary when you spook them.
Kind of figure out the bird to start eating them, just like the state.
Yeah,
does. You
yeah.
had that big burst and then the birds started to figure out they could eat them.
Spongy moth is the next.
But
one after the other.
the large areas infestation of that and Tree of Heaven and Bird Park, that upper corner is choked with it. A guy from Eichenlob did say, be conscious of where you're at. The wood in these trees is so brittle. If you go and kill every tree of heaven that you have, as many as you can, you better have enough people behind you for the dead wood that's going to be standing if you truly get it. So just being conscious of where you are killing them. There's a couple that were killed alongside Beadling Road, I suspect. They now turn into high priority removals for us. So you have to keep that in mind where you're working at. Yes, it's an invasive tree, but a tree that you already have planned removal for is better than one that you just wholesale wipe out and hope nothing smacks over the trail or whatever. So that was his advice on that, and he's been doing a lot of that this year. Down at Brafferton, we removed the backstop, fencing along the hillside. We're working on either a quick solution or call it mildly temporary solution for the remaining fencing that goes along the hill where there's a drop, where there's an actual hazard. Guys did that in I think a matter of 2 days or so. So after that resident meeting, the direction was pretty clear after that. So we just kind of started taking it upon ourselves to get down there and clean some of that up. Working on ordering.
You can be able to see the infield this fall yet?
Yeah, we still have to take that. There's a little hump from the pitcher's mound still there. We did a little grading by the fence we took out. Benches have been removed. Over at Dixon, we replaced 22 fixtures with new LED models this past month. On each head, we went from 1,500 watt metal halide to 450 watt LED. So there should be a considerable savings in that utility when we start to look at it. The PO, we're going to hopefully work with Bradley Ray Tree Service. We're just getting things finalized with insurance and everything like that. He's going to be removing up to about 90 of the marked trees in Williamsburg. That's a big impact. So I'm working with Laura Lilly. We're just not going to go mobilize and start doing that. I'm going to work on some flyers, some language, some education on what it looks like and what the planting plan that was made a couple years ago that will be on this Schichtel's order will also look like. So that planting plan for Rockwood and Williamsburg, we're hoping to have that on this Schichtel's order, and we'll get those suckers in the ground as soon as we can. The removals at Rockwood were obviously far less. We did that in-house. Stump removal will probably come back ourselves and clean up as we go through there. So we'll keep everyone in the loop. I'll send you all the information out. So if you know anyone in that area, you're going to get questions on, there's 90 some white dots on the hillside. You guys are up to something. So, it's pretty clear that there's an area there, but every storm that comes by, we have 2 or 3 less that he has to remove. So it's kind of working slowly in our favor. That's enough.
Did those by the
Awesome.
shooting range with that pocket park, did the pyramidal sweet gums come from Schichtel's? Those ones that look like they're gonna be really tall?
I'll have to ask him.
Because those might be a nice street tree by power lines. I looked at those watches and I was thinking that would be a nice tree where we had a power line.
What were they, Richard?
They looked like they were a sweet gum, but they were just going straight up. Like sometimes you see those oaks that just, they don't get big, they just go up.
You sure they were sweet gum?
I think it was.
It's a sweet gum leaf. I
I've
know
never seen
enough that
ones before, but it was like,
I've never seen a column or a sweet gum.
yeah, that was.
I'll ask Paul when he comes out about that.
Because it just dawned on me, I said, that's what I ran through there, but that might be not be a bad tree in your power lines where you don't want branches going into a power line.
Yeah, that's something to ask him. And the contractor that had worked with us at Bird Park Stream Restoration, he's going to be working soon in Thornwood on that project. He's going to come through. Kelly's going to join us down there. He already had some things he wanted to touch up. I just don't know what touch up means to him. So we're just going to hook up with him, see what he's thinking. I'm going to shoot over some of the ideas I got from you today, Richard, on that.
So who's that?
on that plan. That is ecological restoration. He does a lot of work in Niagara Falls, New York area. He's done a lot of really cool projects. He definitely knows what he's doing. He had suggestions during the project. Do this, don't do this.
Well, the example of that suggestion is what might, but if you just go to that spring cut, somewhere, someone 30, 40 years ago put that plant and it's holding a wall like this together. Whatever that's, that native plant is, there's a great example right there where talk to Ron Block, and he thinks somebody from the Nature Conservancy put that planting in for erosion control in the late 80s, early 90s. And it seems to be working and it can grow in full shape.
Yeah, so we'll go through that area. And in that same area for the Conservancy, we did some poison ivy treatment on paths and working areas where there'll be volunteers will be and have been the last couple of weeks, and dropped upwards of close to 30 dead standing ash through there, just so it doesn't crush their future plantings, or some of them were, close to paths and stuff like that. So we put a little bit of time down in there recently. I think Kelly's kids enjoyed it, walking up the hill to school to hear the big booms through the park. So we were, it was very successful morning. So that's it though.
Sounds like you've been slacking off though.
That's right.
Thanks very much for all that work. So just the last thing is, next park visits are Hoodridge and Church Place. Are the comments we're giving you helpful, Phil?
Yep.
On those?
I
on the
take
park
them, they
report?
turn into work orders, and then
Okay.
we get them done.
Okay, so Hoodridge and Church Place for the next meeting. Ignore the other notes of the next meeting. We'll get back to you on that. And thank you, everybody, for all your hard work and time, and for everybody volunteering to help. So greatly appreciate it. Thanks.
All right.
Oh,
Thank you.
my motion to adjourn.
Bye.
Okay. Yeah.
Good night.
We're adjourned.
Oh, okay.
You're really sweating. All the things especially when